The Gorgonax erupts from the ground, its massive form dwarfing the tallest structures of Hive Prime. Pandronian warriors scatter in terror as the beast's gaping maw, lined with razor-sharp teeth, descends upon a group of helpless larvae. The insectoid soldiers' energy weapons prove futile against the creature's impenetrable hide. Amidst the chaos, a human figure stands resolute. Commander Jacob Gray activates his experimental power armor, the hum of its systems drowning out the screams of fleeing Pandronians. His eyes narrow as he assesses the titanic threat before him. The Gorgonax, a worm-like monster of legend, towers 50 meters above the crumbling cityscape. Its emergence from centuries-long hibernation has brought the once mighty Pandronian civilization to its knees. Gray's mind races, recalling the urgent briefing he received mere hours ago on Earth. The United Earth Defense Force had intercepted a desperate plea from the Pandronian High Council, activating an ancient distress beacon that traversed the galaxy. Without hesitation, Gray volunteered to lead a strike team to Pandron, driven by the challenge of facing an enemy that had reduced an advanced alien species to cowering victims. The UES Thunderbolt, Gray's ship, made the journey in record time using experimental, faster-than-light technology. As they entered Pandron's atmosphere, violent tremors rocked the vessel, a grim testament to the Gorgonax's destructive power. Gray ordered an immediate landing near Hive Prime, where they were greeted by Nova, a male Pandronian warrior assigned as their liaison. Nova's mandibles clicked nervously as he briefed Gray on the mounting casualties and the Gorgonax's relentless appetite for Pandronian young. The insectoid's compound eyes reflected a mix of fear and desperate hope as he regarded the human commander and his team. Gray's strike force, equipped with cutting-edge weapons and armor, represents Earth's response to a crisis that has paralyzed an entire world. As the Gorgonax rears its head, preparing for another devastating assault, Gray stands as the vanguard of humanity's first confrontation with the child-eating worm monster. The commander's voice cuts through the din of destruction, rallying his team. "This is what we came for, people. Let's show these bugs what humans can do." Gray raises his experimental weapon, its power core pulsing with barely contained energy. The fate of Pandron hangs in the balance as humanity prepares to challenge a nightmare brought to life. Around Gray, buildings crumble and the ground quakes. Pandronian warriors look on in awe and disbelief as the human and his team advance toward the Gorgonax. The stage is set for an epic confrontation between Earth's finest and a beast of legend that has brought an entire alien civilization to the brink of extinction. As the Gorgonax loomed over the devastated cityscape, Commander Jacob Gray's power armor hummed to life, its systems responding to his every thought. He flexed his fingers, feeling the suit's enhanced strength coursing through his body. With a quick mental command, Gray activated the armor's jump jets, propelling himself skyward in a burst of blue flame. He landed gracefully on a nearby rooftop, the impact absorbed by the suit's advanced shock dampeners. From this elevated position, Gray had a clear view of the monstrous Gorgonax as it continued its rampage through Hive Prime. The creature's massive, segmented body undulated as it moved, leaving destruction in its wake. Gray's eyes narrowed as he studied the beast, searching for any weaknesses in its seemingly impenetrable hide. He noticed patterns in its movements, the way it reacted to the chaos around it. The commander's tactical mind raced, formulating strategies even as the situation grew increasingly dire. "Team, spread out and create a distraction," Gray ordered through the comlink. "Lieutenant Chen, take the left flank. I want concentrated fire on that thing's hide. Let's see if we can get its attention." "Copy that, Commander," Chen's voice crackled in response. Gray watched as his second-in-command led a group of soldiers to position themselves around the Gorgonax. Their experimental energy weapons flared to life, peppering the creature's armored skin with brilliant bursts of plasma. The Gorgonax roared, more in irritation than pain, as the energy blasts left scorch marks but failed to penetrate its thick hide. It turned its massive head towards the source of the attack, momentarily distracted from its pursuit of Pandronian young. A blur of motion caught Gray's attention as Nova, the Pandronian warrior, landed beside him on the rooftop. The insectoid's compound eyes reflected the carnage below as he chittered urgently. "Commander Gray, I have crucial information about the Gorgonax, Nova's translator device conveyed. Its eyes are its most vulnerable point, but they're protected by transparent eyelids that have resisted all our weapons. Gray nodded, his mind already adapting this new information into his battle plan. He raised his experimental railgun, its power core pulsing with terrifying energy. The weapon's advanced targeting system linked with his armor's sensors, providing a holographic overlay of the battlefield. "Let's test those eyelids," Gray muttered, taking aim at one of the Gorgonax's enormous eyes. The railgun charged with a high-pitched whine, and Gray squeezed the trigger. A hypersonic projectile erupted from the barrel, streaking towards its target with pinpoint accuracy. The shot struck the creature's protective eyelid with a resounding crack, sending spiderweb fractures across its surface but not fully penetrating. The Gorgonax's pained roar shook the very foundations of the city. It thrashed violently, its massive body demolishing several structures in its fury. Gray gritted his teeth, realizing that a single shot wouldn't be enough to breach the creature's defenses. "All units, concentrate fire on the damaged eyelid," he commanded. "We need to break through." The battlefield erupted in a dazzling display of weapons fire as human and Pandronian forces focused their assault on the Gorgonax's weakened eye protection. The creature, sensing the increased threat, retaliated with terrifying ferocity. Glands near its mouth pulsed, and a stream of corrosive acid spewed forth, melting through buildings and forcing the attackers to scramble for cover. As Gray dodged a spray of the caustic substance, he noticed something peculiar about the Gorgonax's behavior. The creature seemed to react to vibrations in the ground, using them to locate its targets, even when its vision was obscured by the chaos of battle. "Lieutenant Chen," Gray called over the comm, "I need you to set up sonic emitters around the battlefield. We're going to create false vibrations, confuse this thing's senses." "Understood, Commander. We're on it," Chen responded, her voice steady despite the intensity of the situation. While his team worked to implement this new tactic, Gray's eyes fell on a nearby construction site. A plan began to form in his mind, a daring strategy that might just give them the edge they needed. "Nova, with me," Gray ordered, leaping from the rooftop and using his jump jets to control his descent. The Pandronian warrior followed close behind as they made their way to the site, dodging debris and acid sprays. At the construction area, Gray found what he was looking for, a massive excavator. With quick, efficient movements, he and a small team began modifying the machine with their advanced technology, transforming it into a makeshift battering ram. As the sonic emitters came online, creating a cacophony of false vibrations, the Gorgonax's movements became erratic and confused. Gray seized the opportunity, climbing into the modified excavator and powering it up. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, driving the improvised weapon towards the disoriented creature. The reinforced arm of the excavator struck the Gorgonax's damaged eyelid with tremendous force. A sickening crack echoed across the battlefield as the protective covering finally shattered, exposing the vulnerable eye beneath. The Gorgonax's agonized shriek was deafening, its body writhing in pain and causing widespread destruction. Gray wasted no time, leaping from the excavator and raising his railgun once more. With unerring precision, he fired directly into the exposed eye. The hypersonic projectile penetrated deep into the creature's brain, and for a moment everything seemed to freeze. Then chaos erupted. The Gorgonax's massive body shuddered and collapsed, its death throes sending tremors through the ruined cityscape of Hive Prime. Commander Jacob Gray lowered his railgun, his armor's sensors confirming the creature's lifeless state. A moment of stunned silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by the crackle of fires and the groaning of damaged structures. "We did it!" Lieutenant Chen's voice crackled through the comm, a mix of disbelief and triumph in her tone. Gray allowed himself a brief nod of satisfaction before switching to command mode. "Secure the perimeter. I want a full damage assessment and casualty report." As his team spread out to carry out his orders, Nova approached, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "Commander Gray, the High Council requests your immediate presence. They await you in the central chambers." Gray's brow furrowed. Even in victory, there was no time to rest. "Lead the way, Nova." The journey to the High Council chambers was a stark contrast to the devastation they'd just witnessed. The deeper levels of Hive Prime remained largely untouched by the Gorgonax's rampage, their organic architecture a testament to Pandronian ingenuity. Upon entering the vast hexagonal room, Gray was struck by the intricate honeycomb-like patterns that adorned the walls and ceiling. 7 elder Pandronians, their carapaces adorned with elaborate markings, stood in a semicircle at the chamber's center. The largest of the elders, his exoskeleton a deep, iridescent blue, stepped forward. "Commander Gray, I am Grand Arbiter Zix. On behalf of all Pandronians, we extend our deepest gratitude for your valor and skill in defeating the Gorgonax." Gray nodded respectfully, removing his helmet. "We're glad we could help, Grand Arbiter. The creature was unlike anything we've encountered before." Zix's compound eyes seemed to darken. "I'm afraid, Commander, that your ordeal is far from finished. The Gorgonax you defeated was but an adolescent. Its death has awakened something far worse." A chill ran down Gray's spine as Zix's words sank in. Before he could respond, a Pandronian scientist burst into the chamber, his antennae twitching frantically. "Grand Arbiter! The seismic sensors! They're off the charts! Something massive is moving beneath the surface, heading towards Hive Prime." Zix turned to Gray, his mandibles quivering. "The parent has awakened, an ancient, colossal Gorgonax that has slumbered deep within our world for millennia. It dwarfs the one you faced, with defenses and abilities beyond our comprehension." Gray's mind raced, quickly assessing the new threat. "We need a plan. Fast. Do you have any mining equipment? Something we can use to intercept this thing before it reaches the city?" Zix nodded, his compound eyes reflecting a mix of fear and hope. "We can grant you access to our most advanced excavation technology. But, Commander, this creature, it's unlike anything our species has ever faced." As if to emphasize Zix's words, the chamber shook violently. Alarms blared throughout Hive Prime, their urgent wails echoing through the organic corridors. "Commander Gray!" a new voice called out. A human woman in a lab coat approached, her eyes bright with persistence. "I'm Dr. Alara Venn, xenobiologist. I've been studying Pandronian biology, and I think I might be able to help." Gray nodded, recognizing the value of her expertise. "Welcome aboard, Doctor. What do you have?" Dr. Venn pulled up a holographic display from her wrist computer. "Based on preliminary data from the adolescent Gorgonax's corpse, I believe the adult might have different vulnerabilities. If we can analyze it further, we might find a weakness." "Good thinking," Gray said. He turned to his second in command. "Lieutenant Chen, I need you to coordinate with the Pandronian forces, set up a defensive perimeter, and begin evacuating major population centers." Chen saluted sharply. "On it, sir." Gray faced Nova and Dr. Venn. "You two, come with me. We're heading to your equivalent of a war room. We need to coordinate a planet-wide response to this threat." As they rushed through the winding corridors of Hive Prime, Gray's mind was already formulating strategies. The ground continued to shake, a grim reminder of the approaching danger. In the Pandronian war room, a flurry of activity greeted them. Insectoid warriors and human soldiers worked side by side, their differences forgotten in the face of a common enemy. Gray took charge immediately. "I need real-time seismic data, topographical maps of the surrounding area, and any information you have on underground tunnel systems." As the information flooded in, Dr. Venn worked feverishly at a console, correlating data from the younger Gorgonax with Pandronian geological surveys. Suddenly, her eyes widened. "Commander, I think I've found something," she called out. "The adult Gorgonax's hide might be vulnerable to a specific frequency of sound waves. If we can modify our sonic weapons—" Gray nodded, a plan forming in his mind. "Do it. Work with the Pandronian engineers to modify as many weapons as you can." He turned to Nova, who stood at attention, ready for orders. "Nova, I need you to guide us through the tunnel systems. We're going to intercept this thing underground before it can reach the city." Nova's mandibles clicked in affirmation. "It will be my honor, Commander." As the war room buzzed with activity, Gray made his decision. "I'll lead a team into the tunnels. Lieutenant Chen will coordinate the above-ground defenses. We hit this thing from all sides." The ground shook more violently than ever, and a Pandronian technician called out an alarm. Commander, the adult Gorgonax has changed course. It's heading directly for our location. Gray's mind focused in purpose. Then we move now. Everyone to your positions. We're taking the fight to this thing. As they rushed to board the modified Pandronian drilling vehicles, Gray couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and dread. The adolescent Gorgonax had nearly overwhelmed them. What horrors would its parent bring? The drilling vehicles roared to life, their reinforced hulls gleaming under the harsh lights of the launch bay. Gray took his position in the lead vehicle, with Nova at his side and Dr. Venn monitoring the sensor readouts. All units prepare for descent, Gray commanded through the comm. We're about to face the fight of our lives. Stay sharp, stay focused, and watch each other's backs. With a final nod to his team, Gray gave the order. The drilling vehicles plunged into the earth, carving new tunnels through Pandron's crust. Behind them, the immense form of the adult Gorgonax loomed, its size and power beyond anything they had faced before. As they descended into the planet's depths, Gray couldn't shake the feeling that this battle would determine not just the fate of Pandron, but perhaps the future of human-Pandronian relations and humanity's place in the galaxy. The drills roared, the earth shook, and somewhere in the darkness ahead, an ancient monster awaited. Awakened, surged towards them. The drilling vehicles plunged deeper into Pandron's crust, their reinforced hulls groaning under the immense pressure. Commander Gray gripped the controls tightly, his eyes fixed on the holographic display showing their descent path. Nova sat beside him, mandibles clicking nervously as he monitored the seismic readings. Commander, Dr. Venn called out from her station, I'm detecting increasing tremors ahead. The adult Gorgonax is on the move. Gray nodded grimly. All units, stay alert. We're about to... His words were cut short as the tunnel walls suddenly buckled. Massive chunks of rock rained down around them, forcing Gray to swerve the lead vehicle sharply. Evasive maneuvers, he barked into the comm. The target is changing course. It's coming right for us. The convoy of drilling vehicles scattered, narrowly avoiding a colossal tendril of flesh that burst through the tunnel wall. Gray caught a glimpse of segmented armor and pulsing bioluminescent patches before the creature withdrew, leaving behind a cloud of noxious gas. Acid geyser, Nova warned, his multifaceted eyes widening. Commander, we must... A jet of corrosive fluid erupted from the newly formed crevice, forcing Gray to push their vehicle into a steep dive. The acid splashed harmlessly against their reinforced hull, but the acrid smell that seeped through the air filters left no doubt about its potency. As they regrouped, Dr. Venn's fingers flew across her console. Commander, I'm getting clearer readings on the Gorgonax's biology. The sound frequency hypothesis is correct, but... She paused, her brow furrowing. The power required to affect a creature of this size is far beyond our current capacity. Gray's mind raced, calculating their options. Can we modify our equipment? I'm working on it, Venn replied, her voice strained with concentration. But it'll take time we might not have. The tunnels ahead opened into a vast cavern, its walls etched with intricate patterns. Nova leaned forward, his antennae twitching with recognition. Commander, look, he exclaimed. These are ancient Pandronian glyphs. They speak of a great battle, eons ago, against creatures like the Gorgonax. Gray slowed their vehicle, allowing Nova to examine the carvings more closely. The Pandronian's compound eyes darted back and forth, deciphering the ancient script. There's mention of a powerful artifact, Nova continued, his voice filled with awe. A weapon capable of repelling the Gorgonax, hidden in a lost city beneath the surface. Gray's eyebrows furrowed as he weighed their options. The tremors were growing stronger, and time was running out. He made his decision. We're splitting up, he announced. I'll lead the main group and keep the Gorgonax distracted. Nova, take Dr. Venn and a small team to find this lost city. It might be our only chance. As they divided their forces, Gray couldn't shake the feeling that he was sending his comrades into unknown dangers. But the alternative, facing the adult Gorgonax with their current weapons, was certain doom. Stay in constant communication, Gray ordered as Nova's team prepared to depart. And Nova, good luck. The Pandronian warrior clicked his mandibles in salute, May your aim be true, Commander. With a final nod, the two groups separated. Gray led his team deeper into the tunnels, the drills roaring as they carved new paths through the planet's crust. Behind them, the colossal form of the adult Gorgonax loomed, its massive body sending shockwaves through the earth with each movement. Gray activated the sonic emitters, their high-pitched whine echoing through the caverns. The Gorgonax recoiled momentarily, then let out a deafening shriek that shook the very foundations of the planet. "It's adapting," one of the Pandronian warriors called out. "The sonic weapons won't work for long." As if to prove the point, the tunnel ahead suddenly collapsed, forcing Gray to swerve violently. The Gorgonax's massive head burst through the debris, its armored hide glistening with bioluminescent patterns. "All units, fall back," Gray commanded, pushing their vehicle to its limits. "We need to draw it away from Nova's team." The chase through the underground labyrinth became a deadly game of cat and mouse. Gray's team deployed sonic emitters at strategic points, creating a web of conflicting vibrations to confuse the Gorgonax's senses. But the ancient creature proved far more cunning than its offspring. With a bone-chilling roar, the Gorgonax released a swarm of smaller eel-like creatures from pores along its body. The parasitic offspring swarmed towards the drilling vehicles, their razor-sharp teeth easily penetrating the outer hull. "We've got boarders," Lieutenant Chen's voice crackled over the comm. "They're eating through our defenses." Gray gritted his teeth, watching as the power levels on their vehicles began to drop precipitously. The parasites were draining their energy, and with it, their chances of survival. "Abandon the vehicles," he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We'll continue on foot. Use the tunnel network to evade and regroup." As his team scrambled to follow his commands, Gray realized that their current strategy was failing. The adult Gorgonax was too powerful, too adaptable for their weapons and tactics. In that moment, Gray made a decision that he knew might be his last. Activating his power armor's full combat systems, he turned to face the oncoming monster. "Lieutenant Chen, get everyone to safety," he commanded. "I'll buy you some time." Before Chen could protest, Gray launched himself towards the Gorgonax, his armor's thrusters propelling him through the air. He landed on the creature's armored hide, magnetic grapples keeping him anchored as the beast thrashed wildly. As Gray faced the colossal worm alone, firing his railgun at point-blank range into its armored segments, he knew that their survival now depended entirely on Nova and Dr. Ven's mission. Somewhere in the depths of Pandron, in a long-lost city of the ancients, lay their only hope of victory. The Gorgonax roared, its massive body coiling to strike. Gray readied himself for the next assault, his mind racing with possibilities. Whatever happened next, he knew that the fate of two species, human and Pandronian, hung in the balance. And deep in the planet's core, the race to uncover the secrets of the past had only just begun. Gray's mind raced as he clung to the thrashing body of the adult Gorgonax, his railgun leaving smoldering craters in its armored hide. The creature's roar reverberated through the cavern, shaking loose debris from the ceiling. Suddenly, Gray's comm crackled to life. "Commander!" Dr. Ven's voice cut through the chaos. "We've discovered something, an ancient device called the Resonance Core. It might be our only chance against this thing." Gray grunted as he narrowly avoided a swipe from one of the Gorgonax's massive tendrils. "Understood, Doctor. What's the plan?" "We need time to activate it," Ven replied, her voice strained. "But if we can, it should incapacitate the Gorgonax. The catch is, we need it closer to our location." A plan formed in Gray's mind. "Copy that. I'll bring it to you." With a burst from his thrusters, Gray launched himself off the Gorgonax, landing on a nearby ledge. His suit's energy reserves flashed a critical warning. He had to act fast. "Lieutenant Chen," he called over the comm, "I need an exit route. Can you get me one?" Chen's voice came back, tense but determined. "Already on it, sir. We're drilling a new tunnel to your location. ETA 5 minutes. Gray nodded, then realized she couldn't see him. "Good work. Now listen carefully. When you break through, I need you to follow my signal. We're leading this thing on a chase." He cut the comm and turned his attention back to the Gorgonax. The creature had recovered from his assault and was now coiling its massive body, preparing to strike. Gray's suit sensors screamed warnings of approaching danger. Acidic geysers, unstable terrain, and the Gorgonax's own bioelectrical field. With a deep breath, Gray activated his suit's remaining offensive systems. A barrage of micro-missiles erupted from his shoulder launchers, peppering the Gorgonax's face with explosions. The creature recoiled, its roar of rage shaking the very foundations of the cavern. Gray used the momentary distraction to sprint along the cavern wall, his mag boots allowing him to defy gravity. He pushed his suit's predictive systems to their limit, narrowly avoiding gouts of acid and falling rocks, as the Gorgonax's thrashing destabilized the entire chamber. "Come on, you overgrown worm," Gray muttered. "Follow the nice human to your doom." As if understanding his taunt, the Gorgonax surged forward, its massive body filling the tunnel behind Gray. He pushed his suit's speed to the maximum, staying just ahead of the creature's snapping maw. The chase through the tunnels was a blur of flashing warning lights, the roar of the pursuing Gorgonax, and the constant rumble of shifting earth. Gray's mind worked overtime, processing the terrain data from his suit and making split-second decisions that meant the difference between life and death. Just as his energy reserves dipped into the red, Gray heard the distinctive sound of a drilling vehicle. A section of the tunnel wall ahead of him began to glow, then crumbled away, revealing Lieutenant Chen at the controls of a massive drill. "Your chariot awaits, Commander," Chen called out, her face grim but determined. Gray launched himself into the vehicle, shouting, "Go! Go! Go!" Chen didn't need to be told twice. She reversed the drill, widening the tunnel as they retreated. The Gorgonax, enraged at the escape of its prey, smashed through the opening, its armored segments scraping against the tunnel walls. As they raced through the newly created passage, Gray quickly explained the situation to Chen. "We need to lead it to Nova and Dr. Ven's location. They've found a weapon that might stop this thing." Chen nodded, her hand steady on the controls. "Coordinates received, plotting the fastest route now." The drill plowed through the planet's crust, creating a path for the Gorgonax to follow. Behind them, the creature's relentless pursuit caused cave-ins and triggered more acidic geysers, turning the tunnel into a gauntlet of deadly obstacles. Meanwhile, in the vast chamber housing the resonance core, Nova and Dr. Ven worked feverishly to bring the ancient device online. The colossal machine hummed with latent energy, its intricate patterns pulsing with an inner light. "The power requirements are enormous," Dr. Ven muttered, her fingers flying over her datapad. "Even with the cores from our vehicles, we're barely scratching the surface." Nova clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Perhaps we're approaching this wrong. The ancients wouldn't have required external power sources. The answer must be here, in the chamber itself." As the Pandronian warrior examined the glyphs etched into the chamber walls, Dr. Ven's team worked to integrate their modern technology with the ancient device. The clash of old and new created a cascade of technical challenges, each one requiring innovative solutions. "Dr. Ven," one of her assistants called out, "I'm detecting a massive energy signature approaching. It's the Gorgonax and Commander Gray's team." Ven's eyes widened. "They've done it. They're bringing it right to us." She turned to Nova. "We're out of time. Whatever you're going to find it now." Nova's antenna twitched as he deciphered the ancient script. "Here, it speaks of the planet's breath. Geothermal energy? The ancients must have tapped into Pandron's core to power the device." At that moment, the chamber shook violently. The wall nearest to them began to glow, then crumbled away, revealing the drilling vehicle with Gray and Chen inside. Behind them, filling the tunnel with its massive bulk, came the adult Gorgonax. "Now or never, Doctor!" Gray shouted as he leapt from the vehicle, his suit's energy reserves finally depleted. Dr. Ven turned to her team. "Reroute all power to the geothermal taps. Nova, help me align the resonance frequencies." As the Gorgonax entered the chamber, its roar of triumph turned to a screech of pain. The resonance core began to pulse, emitting waves of sound that humans and Pandronians couldn't hear, but that clearly affected the massive creature. The Gorgonax thrashed wildly, its armored segments grinding against each other as it tried to escape the sound. But the ancient weapon's power only grew stronger, the pulsing waves visibly distorting the air in the chamber. Gray watched in awe as the creature that had nearly destroyed them all began to convulse, its bioluminescent patches flaring erratically. "It's working!" he shouted over the cacophony of sound and fury. But their victory was far from assured. The Gorgonax's death throes threatened to bring the entire chamber down around them. As the ancient ceiling began to crack, Gray realized that stopping the monster might have doomed them all to a different fate. As the ancient ceiling began to crack, Gray realized that stopping the monster might have doomed them all to a different fate. The chamber shook violently, dust and debris raining down upon them. In that moment of crisis, Gray's mind raced, seeking a solution to their new predicament. "We need to stabilize this chamber," he shouted over the cacophony of crumbling rock and the Gorgonax's death throes. But as he surveyed their dire situation, Gray's power armor emitted a series of warning beeps. The display flickered, showing critically low energy levels. With a grimace, Gray made a split-second decision. He wouldn't be able to assist in reinforcing the chamber, but perhaps he could still turn this situation to their advantage. Pushing aside the pain from his injuries, he began adjusting his suit's remaining systems. "Dr. Venn, Nova," he called out. "I'm going to lure the Gorgonax away from here. Can you keep that thing running long enough for me to get it clear of the city?" Dr. Venn's eyes widened in alarm. "Commander, your suit can't possibly—" "No time to argue," Gray cut her off. "Just be ready to hit it with everything you've got when I bring it back." Before anyone could protest further, Gray activated his suit's sonic emitters. He calibrated them to produce a specific frequency, one that mimicked the vibrations of Pendronian larvae. The effect was immediate. The Gorgonax, even in its pain-addled state, turned its massive head towards Gray, its ancient instincts overpowering the agony caused by the resonance core. Gray didn't wait for the creature to recover. He sprinted towards the chamber's exit, his suit's systems straining to maintain the larval mimicry. Behind him, the Gorgonax let out a roar that was equal parts rage and hunger, its massive body beginning to move despite the debilitating effects of the ancient weapon. As Gray disappeared into the tunnels with the Gorgonax in pursuit, Dr. Venn turned to her team. "Quickly, we need to stabilize the core and reinforce this chamber. If we lose the resonance core, we lose everything." Nova, still connected to the ancient device, chittered in agreement. "The ancestral memories, they show me how to control the core's output, but I don't know how long I can maintain the connection." In the tunnels, Gray pushed his failing suit to its limits. The bioluminescent fungi lining the walls pulsed in response to the Gorgonax's presence, creating an eerie, shifting light show that helped Gray navigate the twisting passages. He could feel the creature's hot breath on his heels, the ground shaking with each of its movements. Gray's suit pinged another warning. Power levels were reaching critical lows. He knew he couldn't maintain this chase much longer. Just as despair began to creep in, he heard a familiar sound echoing through the tunnels, the whine of a drilling vehicle. "Commander Gray," Lieutenant Chen's voice crackled over his comm. "We've got a fix on your position. Hold on." Gray allowed himself a grim smile. "Perfect timing, Lieutenant, but be advised I've got some rather large company with me." As if to emphasize his point, the Gorgonax let out another earth-shaking roar. The tunnel behind Gray began to collapse as the creature's massive body scraped against the walls, its hunger driving it to push through spaces far too small for its bulk. Ahead, Gray saw a flicker of light. The drilling vehicle burst through the tunnel wall, Chen at the controls. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene, her commander, battered and limping, leading a colossal, enraged Gorgonax straight towards them. "New plan!" Gray shouted as he sprinted past the vehicle. "Use the drill to collapse the tunnel behind me. We need to slow this thing down." Chen didn't hesitate. She swung the vehicle around, its massive drill biting into the tunnel ceiling. Rock and debris rained down, partially burying the Gorgonax's head. The creature thrashed wildly, its roar of frustration shaking dust from the walls. Gray stumbled as his suit finally gave out, the larval mimicry ceasing. He turned to see the Gorgonax beginning to free itself from the rubble, its bioluminescent patterns flashing in a frenzy of hunger and rage. "Commander, get in!" Chen called out, extending a hand from the vehicle's hatch. Gray lunged for her outstretched arm, his fingers barely grasping hers as she pulled him inside. The vehicle's engine roared to life, propelling them away from the enraged Gorgonax. "Back to the city," Gray gasped, fighting to catch his breath. "We need to get that thing back in range of the resonance core." Chen nodded, her face set in unshakable focus, as she guided the vehicle through the twisting tunnels. Behind them, the adult Gorgonax resumed its pursuit, its massive body smashing through obstacles in its single-minded quest to devour its prey. As they raced back towards the ancient Pandronian city, Gray quickly filled Chen in on the situation. Dr. Ven and Nova have the resonance core operational, but they need the Gorgonax in the right position for it to work effectively. Chen's hands tightened on the controls. "So we're the bait. Any ideas on how we get close enough without being eaten?" Before Gray could respond, the vehicle shuddered violently. Warning lights flashed across the control panel as multiple systems began to fail. "We've sustained damage from the tunnel collapses," Chen reported, her voice tense. "We're losing power to the main drive." Gray's mind raced, considering their options as the Gorgonax gained on them. The ancient city's entrance loomed ahead, a beacon of hope in the darkness of the tunnels. But with their vehicle failing and the Gorgonax closing in, reaching that sanctuary seemed an almost impossible task. As Chen fought to keep the damaged vehicle moving, Gray made a decision. He knew what he had to do, even if it meant putting himself at risk once again. The fate of Pandron, and the future of human-Pandronian relations, hung in the balance. With revitalized commitment, he began to outline his desperate plan to Chen, knowing that the next few moments would determine the outcome of their mission, and possibly the survival of two species. Species. With a deep breath, Gray turned to Chen, his eyes reflecting a mix of willpower and grim acceptance. "I need you to get everyone to safety," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "I'm going to lead that thing straight to the resonance core." Chen's eyes widened. "Commander, that's suicide. Your suit is all we've got," Gray finished. "Now go. That's an order." Before Chen could protest further, the ancient city's entrance loomed before them. The vehicle lurched and sputtered, its damaged systems finally giving out just as they crossed the threshold. Gray wasted no time, leaping from the dying machine and rolling to his feet. Behind him, the colossal form of the adult Gorgonax burst through the entrance, its massive body demolishing centuries-old structures. The impact sent shockwaves through the ground, nearly knocking Gray off his feet. As debris rained down around him, he noticed something extraordinary happening. Ancient energy barriers, long dormant, flickered to life. Their sudden activation temporarily slowed the Gorgonax's advance, buying Gray and his team precious seconds. The beast roared in frustration, its bioluminescent patterns flashing in angry pulses. Gray turned to see Chen's drilling vehicle crushed under the Gorgonax's weight. His heart leapt into his throat, but relief washed over him as he spotted Chen and her team using personal jetpacks to propel themselves to safety within the city's lower levels. "Commander," Chen called out as she landed nearby. She quickly produced a portable power pack, connecting it to Gray's suit. "This should give you some juice. It's not much, but—" "It'll have to do," Gray said, feeling a surge of energy as his suit's systems partially reactivated. "What's our status?" Chen's face was grim as she applied emergency medical treatment to Gray's wounds. "Dr. Ven and Nova are still working on the resonance core. They're close, but they need more time." Gray nodded, his mind racing. "Then we'll give them time. Get your team together. We're going to set up a series of sonic emitters throughout the city. Create a path of irritating frequencies to guide that monster where we want it." As Chen relayed the orders, Gray surveyed the ancient Pandronian architecture around them. The narrow passageways would slow the Gorgonax's progress, but they'd also limit his team's mobility. He'd have to use every trick he'd learned in urban warfare to navigate this labyrinth. "I'll act as bait," Gray announced, ignoring the protest from his team. "The rest of you, get those emitters in place, and be ready for anything. This thing might have some surprises left for us." No sooner had the words left his mouth than a horrifying screech filled the air. The adult Gorgonax, enraged by the city's defenses, released a swarm of parasitic offspring. These creatures, more developed and aggressive than those they'd encountered before, poured through the city's corridors like a living flood. "Change of plans," Gray shouted. "Chen, take your team and engage that swarm. Use whatever you can, our weapons, Pandronian tech, anything. Create choke points and funnel them into kill zones. Chen nodded, her face set with grit. What about you, sir? Gray's lips quirked into a grim smile. I've got a date with Mama Gorgonax. As Chen's team moved out, Gray activated his suit's sonic emitters. He calibrated them to produce a frequency that would aggravate the adult Gorgonax, then took off running through the twisting corridors of the ancient city. The response was immediate. The colossal creature let out a roar that shook dust from the walls, its massive form crashing through structures as it gave chase. Gray pushed his partially recharged suit to its limits, staying just ahead of the Gorgonax's attacks. He led the creature through a carefully planned route, using his knowledge of urban combat to navigate the complex layout. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of battle as Chen's team engaged the swarm of parasitic offspring. As Gray neared the central chamber, his comm crackled to life. "Commander!" It was Dr. Ven, her voice tight with urgency. "We've made a discovery. The resonance core requires a specific harmonic frequency to reach full power. It needs both Pandronian and human biosignatures." Gray ducked as a massive claw swung over his head, smashing into a nearby wall. "What are you saying, Doctor?" "I have to join Nova in connecting to the machine," Ven replied. "It's risky, but it's our only chance." "Do it," Gray ordered, narrowly avoiding another swipe from the Gorgonax. "We're almost there." As he raced towards the central chamber, the entire city trembled under the Gorgonax's onslaught. Ancient support structures groaned ominously, threatening to collapse the entire underground complex. Suddenly, Nova's voice came over the comm. "Commander, I've uncovered critical information through the ancestral memories. The Gorgonax has a weakness, a vulnerable spot at the base of its skull, hidden beneath overlapping plates." Gray's mind raced, formulating a plan even as he ran. "Understood. Get ready to hit it with everything you've got when I bring it in." He burst into the central chamber, the enraged Gorgonax hot on his heels. Dr. Ven was already connecting herself to the resonance core, her face contorted in concentration as she joined Nova in interfacing with the ancient technology. The chamber hummed with energy, the air itself seeming to vibrate with potential. As the massive creature crashed through the entrance, Gray shouted the order to activate the resonance core. The fate of Pandron, the future of human Pandronian relations, and the lives of everyone in the ancient city now hung in the balance as they prepared to unleash the full power of the ancient weapon against the most terrifying predator in Pandronian history. Gray stood his ground, facing the Gorgonax as the resonance core powered up behind him. The creature's bioluminescent patterns flashed in a frenzy of hunger and rage, its massive form filling the chamber entrance. As the air crackled with building energy, Gray knew that the next few moments would determine not just their survival, but the future of two worlds. Species. As the words left Gray's mouth, the resonance core erupted to life, unleashing a powerful wave of sonic energy that filled the chamber with an otherworldly hum. The adult Gorgonax, caught in the direct path of the sonic blast, recoiled in pain. Its massive body thrashed violently, causing sections of the ancient city to crumble and collapse around it. Gray, seizing the opportunity presented by the creature's momentary disorientation, sprang into action. "Now's our chance," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the deafening roar of the resonance core and the Gorgonax's pained shrieks. With a burst of speed from his partially recharged suit, Gray launched himself onto the Gorgonax's writhing form. His hands grasped frantically at the creature's armored plates as he began to climb towards the base of its skull. "Commander, what are you doing?" Chen's voice crackled through his comm, tinged with disbelief and concern. "Exploiting its weakness," Gray grunted, narrowly avoiding being crushed as the Gorgonax slammed against a nearby wall. "Nova said there's a vulnerable spot at the base of its skull. I'm going to find it." As Gray climbed, Dr. Ven and Nova fought their own battle. Connected to the resonance core through the neural interface, they struggled to maintain control of the ancient device. Sweat beaded on Ven's forehead as she gritted her teeth, her entire body trembling with the effort. "The power. It's overwhelming," she gasped, her eyes squeezed shut in concentration. Nova's tendrils pulsed with energy as she interfaced with the machine. "We must endure, Dr. Venn. The commander's life depends on it." The chamber shook violently as the Gorgonax thrashed, its massive tail sweeping across the floor. Chen and her team ducked behind a fallen pillar, narrowly avoiding being crushed. "We need to stabilize this place before it comes down on our heads," Chen shouted to her squad. She pointed to a series of cracking support columns. "Use whatever we've got left. Salvage Pandronian tech if you have to. Just keep this chamber from collapsing." As Chen's team scrambled to reinforce the chamber's structural integrity, Gray continued his perilous climb. The Gorgonax's bioluminescent patterns flashed in chaotic bursts, its armored plates shifting unpredictably beneath his grasp. He narrowly avoided being thrown off several times, his enhanced reflexes and the last reserves of his suit's power keeping him alive. Suddenly, the sonic waves from the resonance core fluctuated, weakening momentarily. The Gorgonax shook its head, regaining some of its faculties. Its massive eye swiveled, focusing on Gray with terrifying clarity. "Venn! Nova!" Gray shouted into his comm. "What's happening?" Dr. Venn's voice came back strained and breathless. "The interface. It's pushing us to our limits. We can't maintain full power much longer." The Gorgonax, now aware of Gray's presence on its body, began to roll violently, trying to dislodge him. Gray clung desperately to the creature's armor, his muscles screaming with the effort. Chen, seeing the commander's predicament, made a split-second decision. "Team, deploy remaining sonic emitters. Surround the chamber and activate on my mark." As Gray inched closer to the base of the Gorgonax's skull, Chen's team positioned themselves around the chamber. At her signal, they activated their devices, creating a cacophony of conflicting frequencies that assaulted the Gorgonax's senses. The creature roared in confusion and pain. Its rolling ceased as it tried to process the overwhelming sensory input. Gray seized the opportunity, scrambling the final distance to the vulnerable spot Nova had identified. But as he reached the area, his heart sank. The armor here, while visibly weaker, was still far too thick for his weapons to penetrate. Time seemed to slow as Gray's mind raced, searching for a solution. His eyes fell on his suit's power core. In a moment of desperate inspiration, he began to detach it, his hands moving with frantic speed. "Chen!" he shouted into his comm. "I'm about to do something extremely stupid. Be ready!" Before Chen could respond, Gray jammed the overloading power core into a small gap between the Gorgonax's armored plates. He pushed off with all his might, launching himself away from the creature just as the makeshift explosive detonated. The blast breached the Gorgonax's defenses, exposing its vulnerable flesh. But Gray, now without his power armor, found himself in free fall, plummeting towards the chamber floor. Chen's eyes widened as she saw the commander falling. Without hesitation, she fired up her jetpack, launching herself upward. Her arms wrapped around Gray's midsection as she caught him in midair, the impact nearly knocking the breath from both of them. As Chen brought them safely to the ground, Dr. Venn and Nova rallied their remaining strength. The resonance core's energy output intensified, focusing directly on the newly exposed weak spot of the Gorgonax. The concentrated sonic energy penetrated deep into the creature's body. Its massive form began to convulse uncontrollably, its bioluminescent patterns flashing in a frenzied, irregular rhythm. A deafening shriek erupted from the Gorgonax, shaking the entire underground complex. Cracks spider-webbed across the chamber walls as chunks of debris rained down around the team. Gray struggled to his feet, his ears ringing from the creature's cry. As he watched, the Gorgonax's body began to swell ominously, reacting to the sonic energy now coursing through its internal systems. "Everyone, take cover!" Gray shouted, the terrible realization dawning on him. "It's going to explode!" As the team scrambled for whatever protection they could find, the Gorgonax's body continued to expand. The ancient city groaned under the pressure, threatened by both the impending explosion and the caustic internal fluids that would be released. Gray's mind raced, knowing they had mere moments to act. The fate of Pandron, the priceless Pandronian technology, and the lives of his team all hung in the balance. As debris continued to rain down around them, Gray began to formulate a desperate plan, one last gambit to salvage their mission and survive the Gorgonax's final devastating attack. Detonation. In that moment of crisis, Gray's mind snapped into focus, a plan crystallizing in his thoughts. "The city's defenses," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Chen, take your team and reactivate the ancient energy generators. We need a containment field now." Chen nodded, her face set with grit. "On it, Commander. Let's move, team." As Chen and her squad raced through the crumbling corridors, Gray turned his attention to Dr. Ven and Nova, still linked to the resonance core. Their faces were contorted in pain, bodies trembling with the strain of maintaining the connection. "We need to disconnect them," Gray said, his voice tight with urgency. "The explosion could fry their minds if they're still interfaced." He motioned to the remaining team members. Together they approached the linked pair, hands outstretched to carefully extract them from the neural interface. "Easy now," Gray cautioned as they began the delicate process of disconnection. "We don't know what kind of feedback this could cause." As they worked, the chamber shuddered violently. Chunks of ancient masonry crashed to the floor, narrowly missing the team. The Gorgonax's body continued to swell, pressing against the walls and ceiling with increasing force. In the corridors beyond, Chen and her team raced against time. They split up, each member searching for the elusive energy generators that had lain dormant for millennia. "Found one," a voice crackled over the comm. "Activating now!" A low hum filled the air as the first generator sparked to life. Chen's fingers flew over the ancient controls, her mind racing to decipher the Pandronian technology. "Two more online," another team member reported. "The energy readings are off the charts." As the generators powered up, a shimmering field of energy began to form around the central chamber. It started as a faint ripple in the air, gradually solidifying into a translucent barrier. Back in the chamber, Gray and his team had successfully disconnected Dr. Ven and Nova from the resonance core. Ven lay unconscious, her skin pale and clammy. Nova's tendrils twitched sporadically, but his eyes were open, unfocused but aware. "We need to move," Gray ordered, scooping up Dr. Ven's limp form. "This place is coming down around us." As if to emphasize his point, a massive crack split the chamber floor, releasing a gout of superheated steam. The team stumbled back, coughing in the acrid air. "Nova," Gray said, turning to the Pandronian, "we need a way out. Can you access your ancestral memories? Find us a safe route?" Nova's eyes flickered, then seemed to focus. "Yes, I can see. Follow me." The Pandronian led the way, his movements unsteady but purposeful. Behind them, the energy barrier solidified, containing the rapidly expanding Gorgonax. The creature's bioluminescent patterns flashed in frenzied patterns, its body pressing against the shimmering field. As they navigated the collapsing city, Chen and her team caught up with them, their faces streaked with sweat and grime. "Containment field is holding for now," Chen reported between breaths. "But I don't know how long it'll last against that kind of pressure." They pushed on, scrambling over fallen debris and squeezing through partially collapsed passageways. Nova's guidance proved invaluable, leading them through shortcuts and hidden tunnels that bypassed the worst of the destruction. As they neared the surface, a rumble from deep below shook the entire structure. Gray's comm crackled to life, Chen's voice tight with tension. "Commander, the barrier's starting to fail. We've got minutes at best before total containment loss." Gray's fist tight. "Understood. We're almost there. Just a little further." But as they rounded the final corner, their hearts sank. The main exit tunnel had collapsed, a mountain of rubble blocking their path to freedom. Gray set Dr. Ven down gently, his mind racing. "Chen, what have we got left? Any explosives?" Chen nodded, already reaching for her pack. "A few charges. Might be enough to clear a path, but it could bring the whole place down on us," Gray finished. He looked at the team, saw the fear and exhaustion in their eyes. "It's a risk we have to take. Set the charges." As Chen and her team worked to place the explosives, Gray established contact with the Pandronian forces on the surface. The news wasn't good. The battle had caused massive sinkholes to open across Hive Prime, drastically altering the landscape. "Charges set," Chen reported, stepping back from the rubble. "Ready on your order, Commander." Gray took a deep breath, looking at his team one last time. Do it! The explosion rocked the tunnel, clearing the debris, but also destabilizing the surrounding structure. Cracks spiderwebbed across the ceiling and walls. Move! Gray shouted, hefting Dr. Venn over his shoulder. Go! 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 They sprinted towards the newly cleared exit, the tunnel collapsing behind them with each step. Daylight beckoned ahead, growing brighter as they neared the surface. With a final burst of speed, they emerged onto the planet's surface, gasping in the fresh air. The landscape before them was unrecognizable, a maze of newly formed chasms and hills. Pandronian evacuation ships hovered nearby, their engines humming as they prepared for extraction. As the team scrambled aboard, a massive explosion rocked the ground beneath them. The containment field had failed, releasing the full force of the Gorgonax's detonation. From the safety of the rising ships, they watched as a shockwave spread across the surface of Pandron, reshaping the terrain in its wake. The immediate threat was over, but as Gray looked at his battered team in the change world below, he knew their greatest challenges still lay ahead. The ship banked, setting a course for the Pandronian capital. In the cargo hold, Dr. Venn stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Nova's tendrils began to pulse with more regular patterns, his strength returning. As Gray moved to check on them, he felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. The battle was won, but the future of two worlds now hung in the balance. Balance. As the evacuation ships ascended through Pandron's atmosphere, Gray moved to the viewport, his eyes widening at the sight below. The planet's surface had been transformed into an alien landscape. Vast chasms cut through what were once sprawling Pandronian cities, while newly formed mountains jutted skyward where flat plains had existed mere hours ago. Lakes of glowing, caustic fluid dotted the terrain, remnants of the Gorgonax's internal fluids released during its explosive demise. By the stars, Chen breathed, joining Gray at the window. It's like looking at a different world. Gray nodded grimly. The rebuilding process will be challenging, to say the least. As the ships approached the Pandronian capital, the comm system crackled to life. Attention all vessels. You are to report immediately to the High Council chambers upon landing. This is a priority 1 directive. Gray exchanged glances with Chen. Looks like our debrief is going to be sooner rather than later. The ships touched down on a landing pad adjacent to the towering spire that housed the Pandronian High Council. As Gray and his team disembarked, they were met by a group of harried-looking Pandronian officials who ushered them swiftly into the building. The High Council chamber was a cavernous room, its walls adorned with holographic displays showing real-time data on Pandron's condition. At the center stood Grand Arbiter Zix, his exoskeleton dulled with stress, tendrils twitching nervously. Commander Gray, Zix began, his voice wavering slightly. While we are grateful for your efforts in eliminating the Gorgonax threat, I'm afraid we face an even greater crisis. With a gesture, Zix brought up a holographic representation of Pandron. The planet's core pulsed an angry red, with fault lines spiderwebbing across its surface. The Gorgonax's death throes have destabilized our planet's core, Zix explained. Our scientists predict catastrophic tectonic shifts within weeks if we cannot find a solution. Gray stepped forward, his mind already racing with possibilities. Grand Arbiter, with your permission, I propose we form a joint human-Pandronian task force to address this crisis. We'll need the best minds from both our species working together if we're to have any chance of success. Zix's tendrils curled in agreement. A wise suggestion, Commander. The High Council approves. We hereby appoint you as the leader of this coalition. As Gray nodded his acceptance, Dr. Venn stirred from her place on a medical stretcher. I can help, she said weakly. My experience with the resonance core, I think I understand more about Pandronian technology now than ever before. Excellent, Zix said. Dr. Venn, you will head our scientific team. Your insights will be invaluable. The chamber doors slid open, admitting a new Pandronian. His exoskeleton gleamed with a metallic sheen, and his movements were precise and calculated. Chief Engineer Raxon, Zix said. Your timing is impeccable. Please share your proposal with Commander Gray and the others. Raxon stepped forward, his tendrils weaving an intricate pattern as he spoke. I believe we can stabilize the planet's core using a network of energy dampeners placed strategically around Pandron. However, the technology required is beyond our current capabilities. Gray's brow furrowed. We'll need to reach out to Earth for assistance. The United Earth Defense Force has resources and technology that could prove crucial. As Gray made the call to Earth, the rest of the team sprang into action. Chen coordinated with Pandronian Emergency Services, organizing evacuation efforts for the cities most at risk from the continuing aftershocks. Nova used his ancestral memories to identify safe zones and potential shelter locations. Days passed in a blur of activity. Gray found himself constantly moving between strategy sessions, evacuation sites, and meetings with newly arrived human engineers. The UEDF had responded quickly, dispatching a fleet of ships under the command of Captain Alexei Volkov. As Gray waited on a landing pad for Volkov's arrival, Dr. Venn approached him, her face etched with concern. "Commander, we've discovered something unexpected," she said, her voice low. "The energy released by the Gorgonax has altered Pandron's magnetic field. It's affecting Pandronian biology in ways we couldn't have predicted." Gray's eyes narrowed. "What kind of effects?" "Some Pandronians are showing enhanced regenerative abilities," Venn explained. "Others are experiencing a weakening of their exoskeletons. We're still trying to understand the full implications, but it's adding another layer of complexity to our efforts." Before Gray could respond, a sleek UEDF shuttle touched down on the pad. Captain Volkov, a bear of a man with a shock of white hair, strode down the ramp. "Commander Gray," he boomed, extending a hand. "Alexei Volkov at your service. We've brought the equipment you requested, but we've also detected something strange in the debris field around Pandron." Gray felt a chill run down his spine. "Strange how?" Volkov's face grew serious. "Some of the debris is moving against the gravitational pull. It's as if it's alive." As if on cue, alarms began to blare across the landing pad. Gray's comm unit crackled to life with Chen's urgent voice. "Commander, we've got multiple unidentified objects entering the atmosphere. They're on a direct course for the capital." Gray locked eyes with Volkov, both men instantly alert. "Looks like we've got a new threat to deal with, Captain. Let's move." As they raced towards the command center, Gray couldn't help but wonder what new challenge they were about to face. The battle for Pandron's survival, it seemed, was just the beginning. The command center erupted into a flurry of activity as Gray and Volkov burst through the doors, alarms blaring all around them. "Status report," Gray barked, striding towards the central holographic display. Chen's fingers flew across her console, bringing up a real-time view of Pandron's orbit. "Multiple objects entering the atmosphere, sir. Hundreds, maybe thousands. They're moving too fast for standard debris." As they watched, the swarm of objects coalesced into a terrifying sight. The debris field transformed before their eyes, revealing itself as a mass of writhing, tentacled creatures. "Gorgonax offspring," Volkov breathed, his face pale. "They must have been dormant, waiting for a signal." Gray's mind raced. And the death of the adult Gorgonax was that signal. "Chen, get me a direct line to the incoming Earth fleet." As Chen worked to establish communication, Gray turned to Volkov. "Captain, we need to buy time for your ships. How many of your vessels are combat ready?" Volkov's heart made. "We've got 3 frigates and a destroyer that can join the fight immediately. The rest are primarily transport and science vessels." Gray nodded grimly. "It'll have to do. Chen, what's the status of our Pandronian allies?" "We've got 5 combat-capable ships in orbit, Commander," Chen reported, "but they're still recovering from the last battle." The holographic display flickered, revealing the stern face of Admiral Zhao of the Earth Fleet. "Commander Gray, what in blazes is going on out there?" Gray quickly briefed the Admiral on the situation. "We need to form a defensive perimeter immediately. Your ships are carrying vital equipment for stabilizing Pandron. We can't let those creatures reach you." Admiral Zhao nodded. "Understood, Commander. We'll begin evasive maneuvers and deploy our energy shields, but we'll need support." "You'll have it," Gray assured him. Chen, take command of our orbital defense. Coordinate with the Pandronian vessels and Volkov's combat-ready ships. Buy us time to get that equipment planetside. Chen saluted sharply. Yes, sir. As Chen raced off to the orbital control station, Gray turned to Volkov. Captain, I need you to oversee the deployment of the stabilization equipment. Work with Grand Arbiter Zix to identify the most critical areas. Consider it done, Volkov replied, already moving towards the exit. Gray's comm unit crackled. Commander, this is Dr. Venn. Nova and I think we might have a solution, but we need more time. What kind of solution? Gray asked, his eyes never leaving the holographic display of the intensifying space battle. We're adapting the resonance core technology for space-based operations, Venn explained. If we can calibrate it correctly, we might be able to disrupt the Gorgonax offspring's neural networks. Do it, Gray ordered, but be careful. We can't risk further destabilizing the planet's core. As Gray ended the call, Chief Engineer Raxon burst into the command center, his tendrils writhing with excitement. Commander, I have a proposal. It's risky, but it might give us the edge we need. Gray listened intently as Raxon outlined his plan to use Pandron's seismic instability as a weapon against the Gorgonax swarm. It was audacious, potentially catastrophic, but in the face of their current crisis, it might be their best option. All right, Raxon, Gray said, his voice firm. We'll do it, but I'm coming with you. We can't afford any mistakes. As Gray prepared to leave, a junior officer approached him hesitantly. Sir, we're receiving reports of unrest in several cities. A Pandronian named Vextor is leading protests against human involvement. Gray suppressed a groan. It was the last thing they needed right now. Alert Grand Arbiter Zix. Tell him to address his people, reassure them. We need unity, now more than ever. With a final glance at the battle raging in orbit, Gray set off with Raxon. They had a planet to save, a fleet to protect, and an alien swarm to defeat. As they raced towards Pandron's most volatile tectonic zones, Gray couldn't shake the feeling that this crisis was just getting started. Something told him that the Gorgonax offspring were just the beginning of their troubles. As Gray raced through the corridors of the Pandronian capital, alarms blaring all around him, he knew they needed a new strategy, and fast. Commander Gray, report to Central Command immediately, a voice crackled over the intercom. Gray changed course, his boots echoing on the metallic floor as he sprinted towards the heart of their operations. He burst through the doors of the fortified command center, where a gathering of human and Pandronian leaders awaited him. Grand Arbiter. Zix's tendrils writhed with anxiety as he gestured towards the holographic displays dominating the room. Commander, the situation has become critical. The screens showed a chaotic space battle raging above Pandron, while seismic readings indicated the planet's increasing instability. Another display tracked the spread of Vextor's separatist movement across major Pandronian cities. Gray's eyes narrowed as he took in the information. We need a coordinated response to address all these threats simultaneously. He quickly outlined a multi-pronged strategy, assigning roles to key team members. Captain Volkov, I need you in orbit coordinating our space defense. Focus on protecting those transport ships. They're carrying equipment vital to Pandron's survival. Volkov nodded grimly. Understood, Commander. I'll make sure those ships get through. Turning to Chen, Gray continued, Lieutenant, you'll oversee planetside defense. Prepare for any Gorgonax offspring that might slip past our orbital defenses. Yes, sir, Chen replied, her face set with purpose. Dr. Venn, Nova. Keep working on adapting that resonance core technology. If we can disrupt the Gorgonax neural networks without further destabilizing the planet's core, it could give us the edge we need. Dr. Venn, still looking pale from her earlier ordeal, gave a weak thumbs up. We're on it, Commander. Chief Engineer Raxon, Gray addressed the Pandronian, oversee the deployment of the stabilization equipment. We need to counteract this seismic instability before it tears the planet apart. Raxon's tendrils twisted in acknowledgement. I will not fail you, Commander. A new face caught Gray's attention, a stern-looking human with close-cropped hair and a scar across his left cheek. And you are? Major Zack Stryker, sir, Special Operations. Gray nodded. Major, I have a delicate mission for you. Infiltrate Vextor's separatist movement, gather intelligence, and if possible, bring him in. Stryker's eyes glinted. Consider it done, Commander. As the team dispersed to their assigned tasks, an urgent transmission came through from the orbital defense platforms. Chen's face paled as she relayed the message. Commander, the Gorgonax offspring, they're merging, forming larger, more powerful entities. Gray's mind raced. Deploy the experimental EMP weapons. We need to disrupt their ability to combine. He turned to Dr. Venn. Doctor, analyze that merger process. Look for any weaknesses we can exploit. As the command center bustled with activity, Gray made a decision. I'm going to lead a team to study one of the captured Gorgonax offspring. We need to find a weakness we can use against Gorgonax Prime. Before anyone could object, Gray was already moving. He assembled a small team and headed to the secure facility where they were holding the creature. The juvenile Gorgonax writhed in its containment field, its tentacles lashing out uselessly against the energy barrier. Gray studied the creature, its alien physiology both fascinating and terrifying. Traditional methods aren't working, he muttered. We need to try something else. His gaze fell on a modified neural interface, similar to the one used with the resonance core. Sir, the risks, one of his team members began. Gray cut him off. We're out of options. Prepare the interface. As the team worked to establish the connection, Gray felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. The interface activated, and suddenly, Gray's mind was assaulted by alien thoughts and sensations. Images flashed through his consciousness. Vast swarms moving as one, a colossal entity directing their actions, a hunger that spanned galaxies. Gray gasped as he realized the true nature of their enemy. They're a hive mind, he managed to say through gritted teeth. Gorgonax Prime. It's the central intelligence. If we can take it out... Suddenly, the Gorgonax offspring let out a piercing screech. Gray felt a surge of psychic energy pulse through the neural link. Alarms blared as the creature thrashed in its containment. Shut it down, Gray yelled, tearing the interface from his head. But it was too late. The psychic pulse had been sent, a beacon calling out across space. Gray's blood ran cold as he realized what they had done. The command center erupted into chaos as sensors detected a massive energy signature entering the system. Gorgonax Prime had heard the call, and it was coming. Gray raced back to Central Command, his heart pounding from the alien contact and the gravity of their situation. As he burst through the doors, he was met with a sight that chilled him to the core. On the main view screen, a colossal form was visible, pushing aside debris and small planetoids as if they were nothing. Gorgonax Prime had arrived, and the final battle for Pandron's survival was about to begin. All hands to battle stations, Gray ordered, his voice steady despite the fear gripping his heart. This is it, people. Everything we fought for comes down to this moment. As the team scrambled to their positions, Gray knew that their next moves would determine not just the fate of Pandron, but possibly the entire galaxy. The true test of their strategy and their survival was about to begin. The true test of their strategy and their survival was about to unfold. Gray's mind raced as he assessed the situation. The colossal form of Gorgonax Prime loomed ever closer, its tentacles writhing against the backdrop of space. He knew they needed more information, more leverage against this cosmic threat. Dr. Venn, Gray called out, his voice cutting through the tense atmosphere of the command center. Prepare the neural interface. We're going to attempt direct communication with the captured Gorgonax offspring. Dr. Venn's eyes widened. Commander, the risks. I'm aware, Gray interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. But we're out of options. This might be our only chance to find a weakness. As Dr. Venn and her team rushed to make final adjustments to the equipment, Gray turned to Chen. Lieutenant, you're in command while I'm under. If anything goes wrong... Chen nodded grimly. Understood, sir. We'll get you out at the first sign of trouble. Minutes later, Gray lay on a medical bed, electrodes attached to his temples. The captured Gorgonax offspring thrashed in its containment field nearby, its alien shrieks muffled by the energy barrier. Initiating neural interface in 3, 2, 1, Dr. Venn announced, her fingers dancing across the control panel. Gray's world exploded into a kaleidoscope of alien sensations. His consciousness expanded, merging with the vast hive mind of the Gorgonax species. Images flashed through his mind. Countless worlds consumed. Civilizations annihilated. A hunger that spanned galaxies. Through the chaos, Gray struggled to maintain his sense of self. He pushed deeper into the alien consciousness, searching for anything they could use against Gorgonax Prime. Suddenly, a flash of insight. Gray saw the massive creature's central nervous system, a complex network of synapses and neural pathways. He realized with a jolt that it was vulnerable to a specific combination of electromagnetic pulses and sonic frequencies. But as Gray tried to focus on this revelation, he felt his own identity slipping away. The alien thoughts threatened to overwhelm him, to absorb him into the collective consciousness. In the command center, alarms blared as Gray's neural activity spiked dangerously. Chen watched the monitors with growing concern, her hand hovering over the emergency shutdown switch. His brainwaves are becoming erratic, Dr. Venn reported, her voice tight with worry. We're losing him to the hive mind. Chen made a split-second decision. Terminate the interface, now! As the connection was severed, Gray's body convulsed violently. Medical staff rushed to stabilize him as he thrashed on the bed, his mind struggling to separate from the alien consciousness. Get him to emergency care, Chen ordered, her heart racing. She turned to Dr. Venn, who looked shaken but determined. Did we get anything useful? Dr. Venn nodded, her fingers already flying across her datapad. Yes, I think so. Something about electromagnetic pulses and sonic frequencies. We'll need to analyze the data, but it could be the key to defeating Gorgonax Prime. As Gray was rushed to the medical bay, Chen assumed temporary command. She quickly relayed the information to the research team, urging them to modify the resonance core technology to exploit this potential weakness. Meanwhile, in orbit, Captain Volkov's voice crackled over the comms. Chen, we've engaged the merged Gorgonax offspring. The EMP weapons are having some effect, but they're adapting quickly. Chen gritted her teeth. Keep at it, Captain. We need to buy more time. A new transmission came in, this time from Major Stryker on the planet's surface. Lieutenant, we've infiltrated Vextor's group. They're planning to sabotage the planetary defense systems. I'm moving to apprehend Vextor now. Understood, Major. Be careful, Chen replied, feeling the weight of command bearing down on her. Suddenly, the entire command center shook violently. Chief Engineer Raxon's panicked voice filled the room. The gravitational field from Gorgonax Prime is causing severe disruptions. Several stabilization devices have malfunctioned. We're working to recalibrate, but if we can't... Chen didn't need him to finish the sentence. If they couldn't stabilize Pandron's core, the entire planet could collapse. As if on cue, the main view screen lit up with a terrifying sight. Gorgonax Prime had entered Pandron's atmosphere, its massive form casting an ominous shadow over the planet's surface. Panicked reports began flooding in from Pandronian cities. Chen steeled herself, knowing that every decision she made now could mean the difference between survival and annihilation. Implement emergency evacuation protocols for the most at-risk areas, she ordered, and get me an update on Commander Gray's condition. We're going to need him for what comes next. As the command center erupted into frenzied activity, Chen couldn't shake the feeling that they were rapidly running out of options. The fate of Pandron hung in the balance, and the next few hours would determine whether they would emerge victorious or be consumed by the cosmic horror that now filled their skies. As the command center buzzed with frantic activity, Commander Gray burst through the doors, still unsteady on his feet but with a fierce willpower in his eyes. The medical staff trailing behind him protested weakly, but Gray waved them off. Status report, he demanded, his voice hoarse but commanding. Chen quickly filled him in on the dire situation. Gorgonax Prime's arrival, the planet's instability, and the data gleaned from his neural interface experience. Gray's mind raced, piecing together a plan from the fragments of alien knowledge still swirling in his consciousness. We have a chance, he announced, silencing the room. But it's going to take everything we've got. He turned to Dr. Venn and Nova. Can you modify the resonance core to generate the electromagnetic and sonic frequencies we need? Dr. Venn nodded, her fingers already flying over her datapad. Yes, but we'll need an enormous amount of power to affect something that size. Then we'll use the planet itself, Gray said, turning to Chief Engineer Raxon. We need to link the resonance core to Pandron's core. Can it be done? Raxon's tendrils twisted in thought. It is possible, but incredibly dangerous. The slightest miscalculation could tear the planet apart. It's a risk we have to take, Gray replied grimly. He quickly outlined his plan, assigning roles to each team member. As the others rushed to their tasks, Gray activated the comm system. Captain Volkov, status update. The captain's voice crackled through, punctuated by distant explosions. We're engaged with Gorgonax Prime in the upper atmosphere, Commander. It's unlike anything we've ever faced. Hold the line, Captain. We're implementing our counterattack now. Gray turned to Chen. Lieutenant, coordinate our ground defenses. We can't let any Gorgonax offspring break through. Understood, sir, Chen replied, already moving to deploy her forces. The next hours were a blur of activity. Raxon led a team of human and Pandronian engineers in a race against time, installing energy conduits at key tectonic hotspots around the globe. The work was treacherous, with constant tremors threatening to swallow entire work crews. In orbit, Volkov's fleet darted and weaved through a deadly dance with Gorgonax Prime. The creature's massive tentacles lashed out, obliterating ships and sending debris raining down on Pandron's surface. But Volkov's hit-and-run tactics kept the beast occupied, buying precious time for the ground teams. Chen coordinated the planet-side defenses, overseeing the deployment of modified sonic cannons and EMP generators around major population centers. Her teams worked tirelessly, creating a layered defense against any potential ground invasion. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the capital, Major Stryker's covert team put their plan into action. As Vextor rallied his separatist followers, urging them to sabotage the planetary defense systems, Stryker's team struck. Using advanced stealth technology and non-lethal weapons, they swiftly isolated and apprehended the rebel leader. With Vextor in custody, Chen launched a public information campaign, revealing the true nature of the Gorgonax threat and the crucial role of human-Pandronian cooperation. The tide of public opinion began to shift, support for the separatists waning in the face of cosmic annihilation. In the heart of the command center, Dr. Venn and Nova worked feverishly to refine the resonance core technology. As they made their final adjustments, Nova's eyes widened in realization. "Doctor, look at this," she said, pointing to a complex data stream. The hive-mind connection between Gorgonax Prime and its offspring, it creates a feedback loop. Dr. Venn leaned in, her expression shifting from confusion to excitement. "You're right. If we can target that connection, we could neutralize them all at once," Nova finished. As they relayed their discovery to Gray, a new crisis emerged. Raxon's voice cut through the command center, tense with urgency. "Commander, we have a problem. The energy conduits can't handle the full output of the planet's core. They'll burn out before we can launch the attack." Gray's mind raced, weighing their options. There was only one solution, and he knew it would come at a terrible cost. "We'll need teams at each conduit site, manually adjusting them during the attack." A hush fell over the command center as the implications sank in. It was practically a suicide mission. Gray looked around the room, meeting the eyes of his team. "I won't order anyone to do this. I'm asking for volunteers." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Humans and Pandronians alike stepped forward, ready to risk everything for their world. Gray felt a swell of pride, tempered by the weight of what he was asking them to do. "I'll lead one of the teams myself," Gray announced, silencing the protest before they could begin. "We don't have time to argue. Let's move." As the volunteers prepared for their mission, long-range sensors blared a new warning. Gorgonax Prime had begun to spawn a massive swarm of offspring, threatening to overwhelm their defenses through sheer numbers. Gray's voice cut through the rising panic. "This is it. We strike now, or we lose everything." He gave the order, and the modified resonance core hummed to life. Energy conduits across the planet blazed with power, channeling the fury of Pandron's core into their bold strategy. In orbit, Volkov's fleet intensified their assault, keeping Gorgonax Prime distracted as the attack built to its crescendo. On the ground, Chen's forces braced for impact, ready to face any offspring that breached their perimeter. At his assigned energy conduit site, Gray's hands flew over the controls, making split-second adjustments to prevent a catastrophic overload. The air crackled with energy, the sky above Pandron lighting up with an otherworldly glow as the combined might of the planet's core and the resonance core technology focused on their titanic foe. Gorgonax Prime let out a deafening roar that shook the very foundations of the planet. Its massive form writhed in the atmosphere, caught in the web of carefully calibrated frequencies, assaulting its nervous system. As the battle reached its peak, Gray could only hope that their desperate plan would be enough to save Pandron from annihilation. The fate of an entire world hung in the balance, with victory or oblivion only moments away. The air around Gray crackled with energy, his hair standing on end as he manipulated the controls of the energy conduit. Sweat beaded on his brow, his muscles trembling from the strain of maintaining precise adjustments under such intense conditions. Suddenly, the ground beneath him lurched violently, nearly knocking him off his feet. Gray gritted his teeth, bracing himself against the control panel as he fought to keep the power flow stable. Around him, his team struggled similarly, their faces contorted with concentration and fear. "Commander!" Raxon's voice cut through the din of alarms and rumbling earth. "We have a critical situation developing." Gray tapped his comm link, his eyes never leaving the fluctuating energy readouts. "Report, Chief." "The power draw is pushing Pandron's core to its limits," Raxon explained, his usually calm voice tinged with urgency. "We're seeing unprecedented tectonic activity. If we don't reduce the load soon, we risk tearing the planet apart from the inside out." Gray's mind raced, processing the implications of Raxon's words. He glanced up at the sky, where Gorgonax Prime's massive form writhed against the assault of the resonance core. They were so close to victory, but at what cost? "Commander Gray, this is Dr. Venn," another voice chimed in. "Nova and I have made a discovery. The attack on Gorgonax Prime is disrupting its control over the offspring. We're seeing erratic behavior among the invaders on the surface." As if to confirm her words, Gray's comlink erupted with reports from Chen's ground forces. "This is Lieutenant Chen," she said, her voice tight with tension. "We're seeing a change in the Gorgonax offspring. Some are turning on each other, others are becoming docile. It's chaos down here, but it's buying us time." In orbit, Captain Volkov's fleet continued its relentless assault on Gorgonax Prime. The creature's massive tentacles lashed out, smashing through ships and sending debris raining down on Pandron's surface. But Volkov noticed a change in the entity's movements. It seemed to be gathering its strength, preparing for something devastating. "All ships, concentrate fire on Sector 7 Alpha," Volkov ordered, his voice steady despite the destruction around him. "We need to end this now before it can unleash whatever it's planning." Back on the surface, Gray made a split-second decision. "Dr. Venn, can you modify the resonance core's output to target the offspring directly?" "Yes, but it would reduce the effect on Gorgonax Prime," she replied. "Do it," Gray commanded. "Chen, prepare your forces. We're going to turn these invaders against each other." As Dr. Venn and Nova worked to recalibrate the resonance core, Gray turned his attention back to the energy conduit. The readouts were becoming increasingly unstable, the power flow threatening to overload at any moment. "Raxon," he said, his voice grim, "we need more power, but we can't push the core any further. What are our options?" There was a pause before Raxon responded, his voice hesitant. "There is one possibility, Commander. We could reroute power through the planet's natural fault lines, using the molten core as a conductor. It would give us the energy we need, but..." "But what, Chief?" "It could trigger massive earthquakes and volcanic eruptions across the planet," Raxon finished. Gray closed his eyes, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The lives of millions hung in the balance, the fate of an entire world resting on his next words. "Do it," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. As Raxon began the process of tapping into Pandron's fault lines, The planet shuddered with increased tectonic activity. Volcanoes across the globe erupted, spewing ash and lava into the atmosphere. The sky darkened with smoke and debris, creating an apocalyptic scene as the battle against Gorgonax Prime raged on. In the cities below, Chen's forces found themselves fighting a war on two fronts. Gorgonax offspring rampaged through the streets, some attacking the defenders while others turned on their own kind. The modified sonic cannons and EMP generators proved effective, but the sheer number of invaders threatened to overwhelm them. Suddenly, Major Stryker's voice crackled over the comm. "Chen, this is Stryker. My team has neutralized Vextor's separatist movement. We're en route to your position now." Chen felt a surge of relief. "Copy that, Major. We could use your help down here." As Stryker's team joined the fray, their special operations expertise proved invaluable. They coordinated hit-and-run attacks against the invaders, buying time for civilians to reach underground shelters. In orbit, Volkov's fleet executed a series of precisely coordinated attacks, targeting the weak points identified during Gray's neural interface. Gorgonax Prime's regenerative abilities allowed it to withstand tremendous damage, but even it had limits. "All ships, this is Captain Volkov," he announced, his voice filled with commitment. "Prepare for a final assault. We end this now." As the space battle reached its zenith, Gray received an urgent communication from Raxon. "Commander, the planet's core is becoming dangerously unstable. If we don't reduce the power draw soon, we risk catastrophic failure." Gray's heart raced as he processed the information. They were so close to victory, but at what cost? Continue the attack and risk destroying Pandron, or power down and leave Gorgonax Prime wounded but alive? As he grappled with this impossible choice, a new development unfolded. The Gorgonax offspring on the planet's surface began to turn against each other in greater numbers, their hive-mind connection disrupted by the attack on their progenitor. "Commander Gray," Dr. Ven's voice cut through his thoughts, "the recalibration is complete. We're seeing a cascading effect in the offspring's behavior. If we push just a little harder, we might be able to turn them completely against Gorgonax Prime." Gray's mind raced, weighing the possibilities and risks. The fate of Pandron, Earth, and countless other worlds hung in the balance. With time running out and the planet trembling beneath his feet, he prepared to make a decision that would determine the outcome of the battle and the future of both humanity and the Pandronians. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what came next. "All units, this is Commander Gray. Prepare for my mark. We're about to end this, one way or another." Gray's finger hovered over the command interface, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. Just as he was about to give the order, the ground beneath his feet lurched violently, nearly knocking him off balance. A deafening roar filled the air as the planet itself seemed to come alive. "Commander!" Raxon's voice crackled through the comm. "You need to see this!" Gray rushed to the nearest viewport, his eyes widening at the sight before him. Massive geysers of superheated plasma erupted from fault lines across the planet's surface, creating a network of glowing veins that pulsed with raw energy. The spectacle was both terrifying and awe-inspiring, a testament to the raw power of Pandron's core. "It's incredible," Dr. Ven's voice chimed in, filled with wonder and excitement. "The planet's tectonic activity has created a natural energy distribution network. We can use this to our advantage." Raxon's fingers flew over his console as he quickly adapted the planetary defense grid to harness this new phenomenon. "Commander, I'm rerouting power through these natural conduits. It's stabilizing our energy flow and reducing the strain on our systems." Gray felt a surge of hope. This unexpected turn of events might just give them the edge they needed. "Excellent work, Raxon. Keep it stable. All units prepare to resume our attack on Gorgonax Prime." In orbit, Captain Volkov observed the massive creature's movements with a keen eye. Its tentacles, once devastating in their precision, now moved sluggishly through space. "It's weakening," he muttered to himself before addressing his fleet. "All ships, form up on me. We're going in for a direct assault." Volkov's fleet moved into a tight formation, their engines flaring as they charged towards Gorgonax Prime's central mass. The creature lashed out, its attack still formidable, but lacking their earlier coordination. Several ships erupted into fireballs, their crew's sacrifice adding to the grim toll of the battle. On the planet's surface, Lieutenant Chen found herself facing a new kind of chaos. The Gorgonak's offspring, once a unified force of destruction, now exhibited wildly unpredictable behavior. Some turned on each other with savage fury, while others seemed almost docile, their movements uncoordinated and aimless. "Major Striker," Chen called out as she ducked under a swipe from a rampaging offspring. "We need to adapt our strategy. Some of these creatures aren't hostile anymore." Striker's voice came back, tense but controlled. "Acknowledged. My team's moving in with non-lethal containment gear. We'll try to capture as many as we can." As Striker's special ops team deployed across the battlefield, Dr. Ven's excited voice cut through the comm chatter. "Commander Gray, we've made a breakthrough. The offspring are more than just drones. They're Gorgonax Prime's eyes and ears. If we can cut off enough of them from the hive mind, we might be able to blind and weaken it significantly." Gray's mind raced processing this new information. "Chen, Striker, change of plans. Focus on capturing those offspring. Use whatever non-lethal methods you have at your disposal. We need them alive and contained." The ground battle shifted as Chen's forces and Striker's team worked in tandem, using modified sonic weapons and energy nets to subdue the confused Gorgonax offspring. Each captured creature was quickly transported to a specially designed containment field, severing its connection to the hive mind. In orbit, Volkov's fleet pressed their advantage. Their concentrated fire finally breached Gorgonax Prime's outer defenses, exposing a pulsing, vulnerable core. "All ships, focus fire on that weak point," Volkov commanded, his voice rising above the chaos of battle. Gray watched the space battle unfold on his tactical display, his heart racing. They were so close to victory, but the risk was immense. "Dr. Ven, I need options. Can we use the resonance core to deliver a killing blow?" "Yes, but it's risky," Dr. Ven replied, her voice tense. "We can recalibrate for a focused, high-intensity burst, but it might overload our entire grid. We'd be putting everything on the line." Gray closed his eyes for a moment, weighing the consequences. The fate of Pandron, Earth, and countless other worlds hung in the balance. "Do it," he said finally, his voice firm. "Prepare the resonance core for one final assault." As the planet-wide energy grid hummed to life, building power for this last desperate attack, an unexpected development caught Gray's attention. Reports flooded in from the containment facilities housing the captured Gorgonax offspring. The creatures, now cut off from their progenitor's influence, were exhibiting signs of individual intelligence and even attempting to communicate. Gray's mind reeled at the implications. They had set out to destroy a threat, but in doing so, they might have inadvertently created a new form of sentient life. The ethical ramifications were staggering, but there was no time to fully process them now. "Establish a secure facility for long-term study," Gray ordered, his voice heavy with the weight of this unexpected responsibility. "I want a joint human-Pandronian scientific team assigned to investigate this phenomenon as soon as the immediate crisis is over." As the resonance core's energy built to unprecedented levels, Gray turned his attention back to the battle at hand. Gorgonax Prime, sensing the impending attack, began to rally its remaining strength. Its massive form pulsed with a terrifying glow, preparing for one final, cataclysmic assault. "This is it," Gray announced to all channels. "Everyone, brace for impact. We end this now." The air crackled with tension as the resonance core reached its peak output. In orbit, Volkov's fleet pulled back, giving the planet-based weapon a clear shot at Gorgonax Prime's exposed core. On the ground, Chen and Striker's forces took cover, shielding the captured offspring and civilians alike. Gray's hand hovered over the activation control, the fate of multiple species resting on his next action. With a deep breath, he gave the command, unleashing the full might of Pandron against their cosmic foe. A blinding beam of energy erupted from the planet's surface, streaking towards Gorgonax Prime with unimaginable speed and power. The creature's final defenses crumbled under the assault, its massive form convulsing as the resonance core's attack struck home. As the battle reached its climax, Gray and his allies could only watch and wait, hoping that their combined efforts would be enough to end the threat of Gorgonax Prime once and for all. All. The blinding beam of energy streaked towards Gorgonax Prime, its power unmatched by anything seen before. For a moment it seemed as though victory was within reach, but as the resonance core reached its peak output, an unexpected phenomenon occurred. A massive surge of energy coursed through Pandron's natural fault lines, triggered by the immense power flowing through the planet. In an instant, a planet-wide electromagnetic pulse erupted, disrupting all electronic systems. The resonance core sputtered and died, its attack on Gorgonax Prime cut short. The containment fields holding the captured Gorgonax offspring flickered and failed. Gray stumbled as the command center systems went dark. "Status report," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the sudden cacophony of alarms and shouts. Before anyone could respond, a new threat emerged. Gorgonax Prime, seizing the opportunity presented by the momentary lapse in the attack, unleashed a devastating counteroffensive. Bioelectrical discharges rained down from orbit, striking key installations across Pandron's surface and pummeling Volkov's fleet. "Multiple defense outposts destroyed, sir," a panicked voice called out. "Volkov reports critical damage to several vessels." Gray's mind raced, quickly assessing the rapidly deteriorating situation. "Initiate manual override of the planetary defense grid," he ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Dispatch engineering teams to all key power nodes. We need to physically reroute the energy flow to bypass the damaged systems." As teams scrambled to carry out his orders, Gray turned to Raxon. "We need to get the resonance core back online. It's our best shot at taking down Gorgonax Prime." Raxon nodded grimly. "I'll lead a team myself. But Commander, you should know. The engineers will be handling live energy conduits. The risk of electrocution or radiation exposure is extreme." "Understood," Gray replied, the weight of the decision heavy in his voice. "But we have no choice. Make it happen." On the planet's surface, the situation had devolved into utter chaos. Lieutenant Chen watched in disbelief as the freed Gorgonax offspring reacted in wildly divergent ways. Some resumed their attack on Pandronian cities with renewed vigor, while others seemed to turn against their own kind, assisting the human and Pandronian defenders. "This is insane," Chen muttered, ducking as a pair of offspring grappled overhead, one trying to protect her, the other attempting to crush her. She keyed her comm unit. "All units, be advised, we have friendlies among the Gorgonax forces. I repeat, some of the offspring are on our side." Thinking quickly, Chen grabbed a nearby crate of bioluminescent markers. "Team leaders, implement color coding immediately. Hostile offspring get red tags, friendlies get blue. Confirm?" As her forces scrambled to adapt to the new tactical reality, Chen found herself fighting alongside creatures she had been battling moments before. A massive Gorgonax offspring, now sporting a blue tag, used its tentacles to hurl debris at its red-tagged brethren, covering Chen as she directed her troops. In orbit, Captain Volkov surveyed the damage to his fleet with a grim expression. The electromagnetic pulse had knocked out most of their communications, and several ships drifted powerless, easy targets for Gorgonax Prime's continued assault. "Signal the Intrepid and the Valiant," Volkov ordered his helmsman. "Use light flashes if you have to. All functional ships are to form a defensive perimeter around the disabled vessels." As his remaining ships moved into position, creating a buffer against Gorgonax Prime's attacks, Volkov watched the massive creature with growing concern. Its movement seemed erratic, almost desperate. Whatever Gray and his team had done planetside, it had clearly hurt the beast. But would it be enough? Back on Pandron, Dr. Venn and Nova worked feverishly to restore the resonance core. As they rerouted power and recalibrated systems, Venn noticed something strange in the readouts. "Nova, look at this," she called out, pointing to a fluctuating graph on her screen. The electromagnetic pulse. It's altered the core's frequency output. Nova's eyes widened as she analyzed the data. "This is incredible. The new resonance pattern. It's not just damaging Gorgonax Prime. It's unraveling its genetic structure." Venn immediately keyed her comm unit. "Commander Gray, we've made a critical discovery. The altered resonance core frequency could potentially destroy Gorgonax Prime at a genetic level, but the process is highly unstable. If not precisely controlled, it could tear apart the fabric of space-time around Pandron." Gray's voice came back, tense but determined. Understood, Doctor. Do whatever you need to amplify this effect. We may not get another chance like this. As Ven and Nova began the delicate process of recalibrating the resonance core, a new threat emerged from an unexpected quarter. The oceans of Pandron, once thought to harbor only primitive life forms, suddenly churned with activity. Massive tentacled creatures, awakened by the intense energy discharges, rose from the depths. Gray watched in astonishment as the colossal marine life forms joined the fray, their loyalties initially unclear. Some attacked Gorgonak's offspring indiscriminately, while others seemed to be protecting Pandronian coastal cities. Before Gray could fully process this new development, an urgent communication came through from the Pandronian High Council. Commander Gray, a counselor's voice rang out, the seismic activity has uncovered an ancient facility deep within the planet's crust. Our ancestors sealed it away millennia ago. The technology within could turn the tide of this battle. What's the catch? Gray asked, sensing there was more to the story. Accessing the facility requires navigating through newly formed, magma-filled caverns, the counselor replied. The journey would be extremely dangerous, and we can't guarantee what you'll find. Gray's mind raced, weighing the options before him. Focus everything on the recalibrated resonance core, or divert resources to explore this ancient Pandronian facility. Both paths were fraught with risk, but the potential rewards could mean the difference between victory and annihilation. As Gray contemplated his next move, Gorgonax Prime seemed to sense the impending threat. The creature began to gather dark matter from the surrounding space, forming a shield that could potentially render it immune to the resonance core's effects. Commander! Volkov's voice crackled over the comm. Gorgonax Prime is creating some kind of dark matter shield, but the process is causing severe gravitational distortions. If we don't stop it soon, it could tear Pandron apart. Gray clenched his fists, the weight of command bearing down on him like never before. The next decision he made would shape the course of the battle and potentially alter the future of both human and Pandronian civilizations. Time was running out, and the fate of Pandron hung in the balance. Balance. Time was running out, and the fate of Pandron hung in the air like a sword of Damocles. Gray's mind raced through the possibilities, each fraught with danger and uncertainty. We need to act on multiple fronts, Gray announced, his voice cutting through the chaos of the command center. Dr. Ven Nova, continue work on recalibrating the resonance core. Focus on amplifying that genetic unraveling effect. He turned to Chen's holographic image. Lieutenant, coordinate our ground forces. Protect those power nodes and energy conduits at all costs. And keep working with those allied Gorgonax offspring. We need every advantage we can get. Gray's gaze swept across the room, landing on Major Stryker. Major, I need you to lead a team into those magma caverns. Find that ancient facility and see what our Pandronian ancestors left behind. As his officers moved to carry out their orders, Gray opened a channel to Volkov. Captain, keep that fleet of yours dancing. We need to buy time and keep Gorgonax Prime distracted. The command center erupted into a flurry of activity. Dr. Ven and Nova hunched over consoles, their fingers flying across interfaces as they fine-tuned the resonance core's output. Cascading power fluctuations threatened to derail their efforts, warning klaxons blaring with each surge. We're losing stability in sectors 3 and 7, Nova called out, her voice tense. Ven's eyes narrowed as she studied the readouts. Reroute power from the auxiliary generators. We need to maintain the core's integrity at all costs. As they worked, the ground beneath them trembled. Outside, Pandron's volcanoes roared to life, spewing ash and molten rock into the sky. The eruptions sent shockwaves through the planet's crust, threatening to tear apart the very foundations of their defenses. On the surface, Lieutenant Chen barked orders to her troops, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of battle. Blue Team, reinforce the western power node. Red Team, I need suppressing fire on those hostile offspring. She watched in awe as a massive tentacle swept across the battlefield, belonging to one of the newly awakened marine creatures. It crushed a group of enemy Gorgonax spawn, clearing a path for Chen's forces. Xeno Team, What's our status with our new aquatic friends? Chen demanded into her comm. Making progress, Lieutenant, came the reply. We've established basic communication. They understand the threat and are willing to help. Chen nodded, a glimmer of hope rising in her chest. Good. See if they can help stabilize the coastal regions. We can't lose those distribution nodes. Meanwhile, deep beneath Pandron's surface, Major Stryker led his team through a labyrinth of magma-filled tunnels. The heat was oppressive, even through their advanced suits. Watch your step, Stryker warned as a bubble of lava burst nearby. One wrong move and you're cooked. They pushed deeper, guided by faint energy readings. The tunnel walls began to change, transitioning from rough stone to smooth, crystalline structures that pulsed with an inner light. Sir, one of Stryker's team called out, these crystals, they're resonating with the energy from the battle above. Stryker nodded, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. Stay alert. We don't know what other surprises our ancestors left down here. In orbit, Captain Volkov's fleet danced a deadly ballet with Gorgonax Prime. The creature's dark matter shield deflected most of their attacks, but Volkov's keen eye spotted a pattern. Helmsman, time our next volley with the Resonance Core's pulse, he ordered. All ships concentrate fire on grid sector Alpha 7 when I give the word. As the Resonance Core fired another blast, Volkov saw his chance. Now! The fleet's weapons lashed out in unison, striking Gorgonax Prime's shield at its weakest point. For a brief moment, the barrier flickered. Back in the ancient facility, Stryker's team finally reached their goal. They entered a vast chamber, dominated by a device that hummed with almost unchecked power. Command, this is Stryker, he reported. We found something. Looks like a more advanced version of the Resonance Core. Some kind of harmonic amplifier. Gray's voice crackled over the comm. Can you activate it? Stryker studied the alien controls. Possibly, but sir, the energy readings are off the charts. This thing could rip apart space-time if we're not careful. There was a moment of silence as Gray weighed the options. Then, do it, Major. It's our best shot at ending this. As Stryker's team worked to activate the ancient device, Gray coordinated with Dr. Venn to synchronize the Resonance Core's output. The air crackled with tension as both technologies powered up, their combined energy signature warping the fabric of reality around Pandron. Gorgonax Prime, sensing the impending threat, redoubled its efforts. It pulled more dark matter from space, the gravitational distortions threatening to tear Pandron apart at the seams. Core stability at critical levels, Raxon shouted from his station. We can't take much more of this. Gray gritted his teeth, knowing they were out of time and options. Initiate the attack, full power to both the Resonance Core and the harmonic amplifier. As the order was given, a massive pulse of energy erupted from Pandron's surface, aimed directly at Gorgonax Prime. The very air seemed to warp and twist as the beam cut through space, carrying with it the hopes of every being on the embattled planet. The pulse streaked towards its target, leaving the outcome uncertain. Gray, his allies, and every defender of Pandron held their breath, watching as the fate of their world hung in the balance. Balance. The energy pulse raced towards Gorgonax Prime, a brilliant streak of light cutting through the darkness of space. Gray's eyes widened as he watched the monitor. The pulse created a visible distortion, warping the fabric of reality around Pandron. A shimmering, translucent wave rippled across the planet's atmosphere and into space. All personnel, brace for impact, Gray shouted, gripping the edge of the command console. The energy wave struck Gorgonax Prime with tremendous force. For a heart-stopping moment, the creature's dark matter shield fluctuated wildly, and Gray dared to hope it might collapse entirely. But Gorgonax Prime's resilience proved greater than they had anticipated. Instead of disintegrating, the massive entity began to absorb the energy from the attack. Its form contorted and reshaped, growing even larger as it incorporated the power of the Resonance Core and harmonic amplifier. No, Gray breathed, watching in horror as Gorgonax Prime's tentacles, now infused with the new energy, lashed out with increased ferocity. Captain Volkov's voice crackled over the comm, filled with urgency. Commander, we're taking heavy losses up here. Gorgonax Prime's tentacles are tearing through our fleet like paper. Before Gray could respond, The ground beneath him shook violently. Alarms blared throughout the command center as reports flooded in from across Pandron's surface. "Sir, multiple power nodes are overloading," Raxon shouted over the din. "The planetary defense grid is failing." Gray watched in dismay as the monitor displayed massive explosions across Pandron's surface. Entire sections of the planet went dark as the power nodes detonated, creating enormous craters and triggering a new wave of seismic activity. "Lieutenant Chen," Gray called into his comm. "Status report." Chen's voice came back, strained and breathless. "It's chaos down here, Commander. We're doing our best to redirect forces and stabilize the grid, but we're losing ground fast. The allied Gorgonax offspring are helping, but it's not enough." Gray's mind raced, trying to formulate a new strategy. But before he could issue new orders, Raxon's voice cut through the chaos, filled with dread. "Commander, we have a critical situation. Gorgonax Prime's gravitational pull on Pandron has increased exponentially. The planet's crust is starting to crack under the force. I'm detecting massive continental shifts." Gray watched in disbelief as the holographic display of Pandron showed entire land masses colliding and breaking apart. Rivers of magma burst from newly formed fissures, and mountains crumbled like sandcastles. "Planetary core approaching critical instability," Raxon continued, his voice grim. "At this rate, total collapse is inevitable without immediate intervention." Gray closed his eyes for a brief moment, the weight of command bearing down on him like never before. When he opened them, his gaze was steel. "Begin immediate evacuation of all non-essential personnel to the remaining ships in orbit," he ordered. "I'm staying on the ground to coordinate our final efforts." As the evacuation order went out, a new voice crackled over the comm system. "This is Admiral Zara Kavoth of the Pandronian Relief Fleet. We've just arrived in system and are prepared to render assistance." Gray's eyebrows rose. Admiral Kavoth was a legend among both humans and Pandronians, known for her unorthodox tactics and brilliant strategic mind. "Admiral, your timing couldn't be better," Gray responded. "We need every ship and every idea you've got." As Gray began coordinating with Kavoth, another transmission came through. It was Major Stryker, his voice tinged with excitement despite the dire circumstances. "Commander, we've made a discovery in the ancient facility," Stryker reported. "It's some kind of miniaturized version of Pandron's planetary core. We're calling it the Core Seed. Initial readings suggest it might be able to stabilize planetary tectonics on a massive scale." Gray's mind raced with the possibilities. "Stryker, I need you to transport that core seed to Pandron's actual core. It might be our only chance to counteract Gorgonax Prime's gravitational assault." "Understood, sir," Stryker replied. "We're on our way." As Stryker's team began their perilous journey, Gray turned his attention back to the battle at hand. He opened a channel to both Chen on the surface and Volkov in orbit. "Listen up," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "We're initiating a multi-pronged attack. Chen, I need you to focus all efforts on reactivating those damaged power nodes. Work with the allied Gorgonax offspring and see if you can get those marine life forms to help stabilize the coastal regions." "Yes, sir," Chen responded, grit evident in her voice. Gray continued, "Volkov, coordinate with Admiral Kavoth. We're going to use the relief fleet's ships as massive electromagnetic projectors. Create an energy web around Gorgonax Prime. We need to contain its growing power while Stryker's team deploys the core seed." As the various teams rushed to implement their assigned tasks, Dr. Ven's voice came over the comm. "Commander, Nova and I have been analyzing the data from the failed Resonance Core attack. The energy absorbed by Gorgonax Prime has created a feedback loop within its bioelectrical system. If we can find a way to overload this system, we might be able to defeat the entity from within." Gray nodded, though Ven couldn't see him. "Good work, Doctor. Keep working on that angle. We'll need every advantage we can get." He turned back to the main display, watching as Pandron's moons began to veer off course, pulled by Gorgonax Prime's immense gravitational field. The creature's tentacles, now stretching far into space, seemed poised to ensnare the entire planet. Gray clenched his fists, acutely aware that time was running out. The fate of Pandron, and possibly the entire sector, now rested on the success of their desperate plan. As he prepared to issue his next set of orders, the command center shook violently, a stark reminder of the planet's increasing instability. The battle for Pandron had entered its most critical phase, and Gray knew that the actions they took in the next few moments would determine the future of both human and Pandronian civilizations. With a deep breath, he steeled himself for the challenges ahead, ready to face whatever Gorgonax Prime might throw at them next. Gray's mind raced as he processed the incoming information. The situation was dire, but a glimmer of hope emerged from the chaos. He tapped his comm, opening a channel to all key personnel. "Listen up, everyone. We have one shot at this," he said, his voice steady despite the tremors shaking the command center. "We're initiating Operation Pandora's Hope. Stryker, get that core seed to the planet's core. Chen, focus on restoring the defense grid. Volkov and Kavoth, prepare for electromagnetic containment." As the orders were relayed, Gray turned to Dr. Ven's holographic projection. "Doctor, I need that modified resonance core ready to exploit Gorgonax Prime's weakness. How soon can you deliver?" Ven's image flickered as another tremor rocked the facility. "We're working as fast as we can, Commander. Nova's calculations suggest we can have it operational within the hour." "Make it half that," Gray replied, his eyes fixed on the main display showing Pandron's rapidly deteriorating condition. Meanwhile, deep beneath the planet's surface, Major Stryker led his team through a labyrinth of magma-filled tunnels. The heat was even more oppressive now, their suits barely able to compensate for the rising temperatures. "Core seed stable," reported Corporal Zhang, cradling the ancient device. "But these tremors are getting worse. We need to move faster." Stryker nodded, gesturing towards a narrow passage that glowed with an ominous orange light. "That's our best bet. Stay close and watch your footing." As they navigated the treacherous path, the walls around them began to shift and crack. Globules of molten rock rained down, hissing as they struck the ground. "Sir!" shouted Private Reeves, pointing ahead. "Look!" The tunnel opened into a vast cavern, its center occupied by a churning mass of superheated plasma, Pandron's failing core. The core seed in Zhang's arms began to pulse, resonating with the energy surrounding them. Stryker's eyes widened as he took in the scene. "This is it. We need to get that seed to the center of the core." Above the planet's surface, Admiral Zara Kavoth's fleet moved into position. Her flagship, the PRS Stormbreaker, served as the linchpin for the massive electromagnetic web they were about to deploy. "All ships, report status," Kavoth commanded, her tentacles twitching with anticipation. A chorus of confirmations flooded the comm channel. Kavoth nodded, satisfied. "Initiate web deployment on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." Space itself seemed to warp as the fleet activated their electromagnetic projectors in perfect synchronization. A shimmering lattice of energy began to form around Gorgonax Prime, its tendrils of dark matter recoiling from the newly erected barrier. On Pandron's surface, Lieutenant Chen raced against time. Her team, bolstered by the allied Gorgonax offspring and the newly cooperative marine life forms, worked frantically to reactivate the damaged power nodes. "Team Alpha, how's that coastal stabilization coming?" Chen shouted into her comm as she rerouted power conduits. A garbled response came through, punctuated by the sound of crashing waves. "Making progress, Lieutenant. The aquatic allies are reinforcing the shoreline, but these quakes aren't making it easy." Chen gritted her teeth, her hands flying over the control panel. "Keep at it. We need those nodes back online yesterday." In orbit, Captain Volkov coordinated his remaining ships in a relentless series of hit-and-run attacks against Gorgonax Prime. The massive entity's tentacles lashed out, narrowly missing the agile vessels as they darted in and out of range. "Concentrate fire on Sector Gamma 9, Volkov ordered, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "That's where its shield is weakest." A barrage of energy weapons struck Gorgonax Prime, momentarily disrupting its dark matter field. The creature recoiled, its vast form rippling with what might have been pain. Back in the command center, Gray watched as the various elements of their desperate plan began to align. He turned to Raxon, who was monitoring the planet's vital signs. "Status on the moons?" Gray asked, dreading the answer. Raxon's face was grim as he responded. "Not good, sir. Their orbits are deteriorating rapidly. Impact is imminent unless we can stabilize the planet's gravitational field. Gray nodded, then opened a channel to the allied Gorgonax offspring. This is Commander Gray. We need you to form a planetary shield immediately. It's our only chance to slow the moon's approach. As the offspring moved into position, creating a shimmering barrier in Pendron's upper atmosphere, Dr. Ven's voice crackled over the comm. Commander, we're ready. The modified resonance core is primed and targeted at Gorgonax Prime's central mass. Gray took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Everything had led to this. He opened a channel to all teams. This is it, people. Execute on my mark. He paused, watching as the final pieces fell into place. Mark! In that instant, multiple events unfolded simultaneously. Major Striker activated the core seed, sending a surge of stabilizing energy through Pendron's core. Admiral Kavath's fleet tightened their electromagnetic web around Gorgonax Prime. The allied offspring strengthened their planetary shield as the moons loomed ever closer, and Dr. Ven launched the modified resonance core pulse directly at the heart of the monstrous entity. The combined energies collided in a spectacular display of light and power. Gorgonax Prime writhed, its dark matter shield fluctuating wildly as it struggled to maintain cohesion. The space around the creature began to warp and twist, creating a localized distortion in the fabric of reality. Gray watched in awe as Gorgonax Prime was slowly drawn into this spatial anomaly, its massive form compressing and distorting. The creature's tentacles thrashed violently, striking out at the surrounding ships and threatening to tear apart the electromagnetic web. Hold the line, Gray shouted, his voice carrying to every corner of the battle. We've got it on the ropes. As Gorgonax Prime continued to be pulled into the anomaly, the strain on Pendron began to ease. The planet's core, bolstered by the ancient core seed, pulsed with renewed strength. The allied offspring's shield held firm, slowing the approach of the wayward moons. But the battle was nowhere near the end. Gorgonax Prime, even as it was drawn into the spatial distortion, lashed out with unimaginable power. Ships from Kavath's fleet were struck, their hulls crumpling under the onslaught. The electromagnetic web flickered, threatening to collapse entirely. Gray's fingers dug into the edge of the command console as he watched the struggle unfold. The fate of Pendron, and perhaps the entire sector, hung in the balance. As Gorgonax Prime's form continued to compress and distort, Gray knew that the next few moments would determine the outcome of their bold strategy. Gambit. As the seconds ticked by, the situation took a drastic turn for the worse. Gorgonax Prime, its form now a writhing mass of distorted matter, unleashed a final, devastating assault. Massive tendrils of dark energy erupted from its rapidly imploding body, lashing out at Pendron and the surrounding fleet with unbridled fury. The command center rocked violently as the first wave of the attack struck. Gray stumbled, catching himself on the edge of the console. "Status report," he barked, his eyes fixed on the main display. Raxon's fingers flew across his terminal. "Sir, the allied offspring's electromagnetic shield is failing. We're detecting massive energy spikes across the planet's surface." Gray's eyebrows furrowed as he watched the shield flicker and destabilize. He knew what had to be done. "This is Commander Gray to all personnel," he announced, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Initiate immediate evacuation procedures. All non-essential staff are to report to the nearest shuttle bay immediately." He turned to his second-in-command. "Coordinate with Admiral Kavath. I want her fleet redirected to support rescue operations. Priority goes to key scientific and military personnel." As the evacuation order spread, Gray opened a channel to Major Striker. "Major, what's your status?" Striker's voice came through, punctuated by the sound of rumbling earth. "Core seed is integrated and operational, sir. We're beginning our ascent, but the crust is becoming increasingly unstable." "Understood. Get your team to the surface ASAP. We'll have an extraction team waiting." Gray switched his attention to the surface operations. "Lieutenant Chen, report." Chen's response was filled with static and the sounds of frantic activity. "We're holding on by a thread, Commander. The defense grid is failing faster than we can reroute power. We're using the offspring as living conduits. But I don't know how long we can keep this up." "Do what you can, Lieutenant. Evacuation teams are on their way." In orbit, Volkov's fleet engaged in a deadly dance with Gorgonax Prime's flailing tendrils. The ships weaved and dodged, their agility proving crucial as they provided covering fire for the rising evacuation shuttles. "Volkov to Gray," the captain's voice crackled over the comm. "We're taking heavy losses up here. How long do you need?" "Hold the line, Captain," Gray replied. "Every second counts." As if on cue, Dr. Ven's holographic image appeared in the command center. "Commander, we have a problem." The scientist's voice was urgent. "The energy feedback loop within Gorgonax Prime is causing it to implode, but it's generating an immense gravitational pull. If we don't act fast, it'll drag Pandron and the fleet into the anomaly with it." Gray's mind raced, considering their options. He turned to Admiral Kavoth's image on the main screen. "Admiral, I need you to reconfigure your fleet's electromagnetic projectors. We're going to create a gravitational anchor to counter Gorgonax Prime's pull." Kavoth's tentacles writhed with agitation. "It's risky, Commander. The strain on our ships will be immense." "It's our only chance to buy more time for the evacuation," Gray insisted. Kavoth nodded, her compound eyes gleaming with tenacity. "Very well. Initiating reconfiguration now." As Kavoth's fleet activated their makeshift gravitational anchor, the effects rippled through the Pandronian system. Several ships buckled under the strain, their hulls groaning under the immense pressure. On Pandron's surface, the situation deteriorated rapidly. Entire continents shifted and cracked as the planet was caught in the gravitational tug-of-war between Gorgonax Prime and the fleet's anchor. The core seed pulsed frantically, struggling to hold the planet together. Major Stryker and his team, nearing the surface, encountered a new obstacle. "Commander," Stryker's voice came through, tinged with frustration. "Our exit route is sealed off. The tectonic shifts have changed the landscape completely." Gray could hear the unspoken question in Stryker's voice. He took a deep breath before responding. "Do what you have to do, Major. Get your team to the surface." "Understood, sir," Stryker replied. Moments later, a series of explosions rocked the planet's crust, carving a new path to the surface, but further destabilizing the surrounding area. As the evacuation continued, Lieutenant Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "Commander, we have a new problem. The offspring, they're changing. I think they're reverting to their original state." Gray's blood ran cold. "Can you contain them?" "Negative, sir," Chen replied, her voice strained. "We're barely keeping them in check as it is. If they turn hostile—" Gray didn't need her to finish the thought. He turned to Raxon. "Prioritize Chen's team for immediate extraction. We can't risk losing them if the offspring turn." As Gray weighed their dwindling options, Dr. Ven's voice cut through his thoughts. "Commander, Gorgonax Prime's implosion has reached a critical stage. Its consciousness is fragmenting, and it's releasing pulses of dark energy. If we don't act soon, it could tear apart the fabric of space-time in this entire sector." Gray stared at the main display, watching as Pandron was slowly pulled toward the spatial anomaly. He knew what needed to be done, but the cost would be high. "Admiral Kavoth," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of his decision, "I need you to prepare your fleet for a towing maneuver. We're going to physically pull Pandron away from the anomaly." Kavoth's image flickered as another energy pulse struck her ship. "Commander, the strain on our vessels is already at the breaking point. This maneuver, it will mean the loss of many ships and crew." "I know, Admiral," Gray replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "But if we don't act now, we'll lose everything." As Gray and Kavoth began to strategize the risky maneuver, alarms blared throughout the command center. Raxon's voice cut through the noise. "Commander, Gorgonax Prime's energy emissions are spiking. We're detecting massive distortions in the local space-time continuum." Gray watched in horror as the fabric of reality itself seemed to warp and twist around the dying entity. He knew that his next decision would determine the fate of Pandron, the remaining fleet, and possibly the entire sector. With a heavy heart, he opened a channel to all remaining forces. "This is Commander Gray. Prepare for emergency maneuvers. May the stars guide us all." Gray's eyes narrowed as he absorbed the gravity of the situation. The fabric of reality warping around Gorgonax Prime, the imminent destruction of Pandron, and the lives of countless beings hanging in the balance. There was no time for hesitation. "Admiral Kavoth," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos of the command center, "position your fleet in a hemisphere formation around Pandron's southern pole. Extend tractor beams and create a web structure. Latch onto the planet's crust." Kavoth's image flickered as she nodded, her tentacles already gesticulating orders to her fleet. "Understood, Commander. Initiating maneuver now." Gray turned to Lieutenant Chen's holographic projection. "Lieutenant, I need you to guide the allied Gorgonax offspring to Pandron's northern hemisphere. They're our last line of defense." Chen's eyes widened, but she quickly composed herself. "Yes, sir. What's the plan?" "We're going to use them as a repulsive force field," Gray explained, his fingers flying over the console as he input calculations. "Combined with Kavoth's tractor beams, we might just be able to pull Pandron away from this mess." As Kavoth's fleet moved into position, the allied offspring swarmed across Pandron's northern half. The sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a living, pulsating shield of otherworldly beings stretching across the horizon. "All units in position," Kavoth reported, "engaging tractor beams now." The effect was immediate. Pandron shuddered as the opposing forces of Kavoth's fleet and the Gorgonax offspring began to tug at the planet. Slowly, agonizingly, it began to move. But the cost was high. Ships in Kavoth's fleet groaned under the strain, their hulls buckling as they pushed their engines beyond safe limits. Several vessels erupted in flames, their crews abandoning ship in escape pods. The Gorgonax offspring fared no better. Their bodies, once solid and defined, began to lose cohesion. They merged and separated, their forms becoming increasingly unstable as they channeled more and more energy. Amidst this chaos, a welcome voice crackled over the comm. "This is Major Stryker. We've reached the surface with the Core C data, requesting immediate evac." Gray breathed a sigh of relief. "Extraction team, move in now. Get them out of there." As Stryker's team boarded their rescue shuttle, the ground beneath them split apart, revealing the molten core of Pandron. The shuttle's engines roared to life, barely lifting off before the land they had stood on moments ago was swallowed by the planet's fury. Dr. Ven's voice cut through the din. "Commander, we're detecting anomalies throughout the battlefield. The dark energy pulses from Gorgonax Prime are creating localized areas of altered physics." Gray watched in horror as these reality bubbles began to appear. Ships caught in their influence experienced sudden, drastic changes. One of Volkov's vessels increased in mass so rapidly, it plummeted towards Pandron's surface. "Volkov!" Gray shouted. "Use your weapons as thrusters. It's your only chance." Volkov's reply was drowned out by the sound of his ship's cannons firing continuously, creating a counterforce to slow their descent. On Pandron's surface, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Entire sections of the planet experienced wild fluctuations in gravity, density, and even time itself. Chen and her team raced against these anomalies, coordinating the final stages of the evacuation. Gray's mind raced. They needed a new strategy, and fast. He turned to Dr. Ven's hologram. "Doctor, is there any way we can use the resonance core technology to counteract these reality bubbles?" Ven's eyes lit up. "We might be able to reconfigure the remaining parts of the resonance core to emit a stabilizing field. It's risky, but it could normalize the affected areas." "Do it," Gray ordered. "We're running out of options." As Ven and her team worked feverishly on their solution, the situation continued to spiral out of control. The spatial anomaly consuming Gorgonax Prime expanded, threatening to engulf nearby ships. Kavoth's fleet pushed their engines harder, the strain visible in the Admiral's compound eyes. Then something unexpected happened. The allied Gorgonax offspring, their individual forms now completely lost, merged into a single massive entity, encapsulating Pandron's northern hemisphere. This new being, a collective consciousness of countless Gorgonax minds, spoke directly into Chen's mind. "Commander," Chen's voice trembled as she relayed the message, "the Gorgonax entity, it's going to sacrifice itself to save the planet." Gray closed his eyes, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. When he opened them, his decision was made. "All remaining personnel, evacuate Pandron immediately. We're making our final play. As the last evacuation ships lifted off, Gray gave his orders. Admiral Kavath, on my mark, disengage your tractor beams. Chen, tell the Gorgonax entity to prepare for one massive energy pulse. The tension in the command center was palpable as they waited for Gray's signal. The spatial anomaly loomed ever closer, reality itself seeming to bend around them. Gray took a deep breath. Mark! In that instant, Kavath's fleet disengaged, their engines firing at maximum capacity. Simultaneously, the Gorgonax entity released its accumulated energy in a colossal electromagnetic pulse that engulfed the entire planet. Pandron shot away from the anomaly with tremendous force, hurtling through space. The remaining ships struggled to keep pace, their crews watching in awe as the planet receded into the distance. Behind them, the spatial anomaly consuming Gorgonax Prime reached its climax. In a blinding flash of light and energy, it collapsed in on itself, taking the ancient entity with it. As the light faded and the immediate danger passed, Gray surveyed the battered remains of their fleet. Pandron was safe for now, but drifting off into the depths of space. The Gorgonax offspring were gone, sacrificed in their final heroic act. Gray opened a channel to all ships. This is Commander Gray. Regroup at these coordinates for damage assessment and casualty report. He paused, looking out at the stars. We've survived, but our journey is nowhere near the end. We've survived, but our journey is nowhere near the end. Gray's words hung in the air as the battered fleet regrouped at the designated coordinates. The command center buzzed with activity as damage reports and casualty lists poured in from every ship. Commander, Raxon said, his voice somber. Preliminary reports indicate we've lost 30% of our fleet. Many of the remaining vessels are operating at reduced capacity. Gray nodded, his eyes sharp. Understood. Begin a comprehensive assessment of our losses and remaining resources. We need to know exactly where we stand. As the fleet spread out in a defensive formation, Gray turned to Admiral Kavath's hologram. Admiral, I want your ship scanning the surrounding space for any residual threats or anomalies. We can't afford any surprises right now. Kavath's tentacles writhed in acknowledgement. Already on it, Commander. My ships are deploying long-range sensor arrays as we speak. Suddenly, a new face appeared on the main display. Commander Gray, this is Chief Science Officer Dr. Marcus Holt. I request permission to come aboard and present my findings. Gray's eyebrows furrowed. Dr. Holt, I thought your research vessel was on a separate mission during the conflict. It was, sir, Holt replied, his eyes gleaming with excitement. But we've made a discovery that could change everything. Minutes later, Dr. Holt stood before Gray and his senior staff, his hands moving animatedly as he explained. The collapse of Gorgonax Prime has left behind a trail of exotic particles and energy signatures. Based on our initial analysis, these could potentially be harnessed for various applications, from advanced propulsion systems to energy production on a scale we've never seen before. Gray leaned forward, intrigued. And you believe we can safely collect these particles? Holt nodded vigorously. With the proper shielding, yes. I propose leading a small team to collect samples and data from the area where Gorgonax Prime imploded. After a moment's consideration, Gray nodded. Approved, but take every precaution, Doctor. We've seen enough surprises for one day. As Holt's team began preparations, alarms blared throughout the command center. Admiral Kavath's image flickered to life, her compound eyes wide with concern. Commander, our long-range sensors have detected multiple unidentified objects approaching our position at high speed. Their propulsion signature, it's similar to that of the Gorgonax offspring. Gray's blood ran cold. Battle stations. Captain Volkov, form a protective perimeter around our damaged vessels and evacuation shuttles. Lieutenant Chen, coordinate with the remaining allied Gorgonax offspring. Use them as an early warning system. As the fleet scrambled into defensive positions, Major Stryker's voice came through the comm. Commander, we've completed our initial analysis of the core seed data. You're not going to believe this. Go ahead, Major, Gray said, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The core seed's integration with Pandron's core has fundamentally altered the planet's internal structure. It's granting Pandron a degree of self-stabilization as it drifts through space The planet may be able to sustain itself far longer than we initially thought. Before Gray could fully process this information, Dr. Venn and Nova burst into the command center. "Commander," Venn said breathlessly, "we've reconfigured the remaining resonance core components. We can use them to create a large-scale scanner capable of piercing through any cloaking or stealth systems." Gray nodded sharply. "Do it. We need to know what we're dealing with." As the makeshift scanner powered up, it emitted a powerful burst of energy that momentarily illuminated the surrounding space. The command center fell silent as the results appeared on the main display. "Sir," Raxon said, his voice filled with surprise, "the approaching objects, they're not Gorgonak's offspring, they're ships, a diverse collection of vessels from various species." As if on cue, a transmission crackled through the comm system. A deep, resonant voice filled the command center. "Attention, Human Pandronian Alliance. This is Arbitrator Zixcal of the Galactic Conclave. We request an immediate audience to discuss recent events and their implications for galactic stability." Gray exchanged glances with Admiral Kavath and his senior staff. The tension in the air was palpable. "Arbitrator Zixcal," Gray responded, his voice steady. "This is Commander Gray. We're willing to meet. Please transmit your preferred protocols for the meeting." As preparations for the diplomatic encounter began, Dr. Holt's voice cut through the comm chatter. "Commander, we've made a startling discovery. The exotic particles left behind by Gorgonax Prime's implosion, they're coalescing into stable structures. It's incredible. They appear to be forming seeds of new, miniature universes." Gray's mind reeled at the implications. He looked around the command center, taking in the faces of his crew, a mix of excitement, fear, and drive. The fate of not just their alliance, but potentially the entire galaxy, now hung in the balance. "Raxon," Gray said, his voice low and focused, "prepare a secure conference room aboard Admiral Kavath's flagship. Make sure all necessary security protocols are in place." He turned to face the rest of his team. "Let's make sure we're ready for whatever comes next." The potential implications of this meeting burdened immensely on his mind as he made his way to the conference room. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Gray's comm unit crackled to life with Dr. Holt's frantic voice. "Commander, the exotic particles we've been studying, they're expanding at an exponential rate. They're forming unstable micro-universes, and they're threatening to engulf nearby ships." Gray's eyes widened. He tapped his comm, issuing rapid-fire orders. "All ships in the vicinity of Dr. Holt's research vessel, initiate immediate evacuation procedures. Holt, get your team out of there now." As Gray changed course to address this new crisis, Lieutenant Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "Sir, we're detecting unusual activity among the allied Gorgonax offspring. They're changing." Gray's brow furrowed. "Changing how, Lieutenant?" "Their bodies are morphing, sir. It looks like rapid evolution. I've never seen anything like it." "Isolate them immediately," Gray ordered. "Move them to a secure holding bay and maintain constant surveillance." As if the situation couldn't get any more complex, Admiral Kavath's hologram flickered to life, her compound eyes reflecting urgency. "Commander, we have a problem. My flagship's energy core is destabilizing. The damage from our battle with Gorgonax Prime was more severe than we initially thought." Gray's mind raced, prioritizing the mounting crises. He tapped his comm again. "Raxon, gather a team of our best human and Pandronian engineers. Get to Admiral Kavath's flagship and stabilize that core." "On it, Commander," Raxon's voice crackled back. Gray turned to Dr. Venn and Nova, who had been silently observing the unfolding chaos. "I need you two to assist Raxon. Your expertise with the resonance core technology might be crucial in stabilizing the flagship systems." As Venn and Nova hurried off, Gray addressed Major Stryker. "Major, I want you to lead a team to secure the evolving Gorgonax offspring. We need to understand what's happening to them, but safety is your top priority." Stryker nodded sharply. "Understood, sir. We'll contain the situation." Gray took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. The Galactic Conclave ships were minutes away from docking, and he couldn't afford to show any weakness or disorganization. As he approached the conference room, he was joined by Admiral Kavath, who had transferred from her unstable flagship, and a new face, Ambassador Jax Varen, a seasoned human diplomat specializing in first contact scenarios. Ambassador Varen, Gray nodded in greeting. I appreciate you joining us on such short notice. Varen, a tall, slender man with piercing blue eyes, offered a tight smile. When the fate of two species hangs in the balance, Commander, one doesn't hesitate to answer the call. The trio entered the conference room just as Arbitrator Zixcal was being escorted in. The alien dignitary was a striking sight, tall and multi-limbed, with iridescent skin that seemed to shimmer with each movement. As they took their seats, Gray couldn't help but feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The outcome of this meeting could shape the future of both humanity and the Pandronians in the wider galactic community. Arbitrator Zixcal's voice, deep and resonant, filled the room. Commander Gray, Admiral Kavoth, Ambassador Varen, on behalf of the Galactic Conclave, I thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Recent events have brought your alliance to our attention in a most dramatic fashion. Gray leaned forward, his voice steady despite the chaos he knew was unfolding beyond the conference room walls. Arbitrator, we appreciate the Conclave's interest in our situation. However, I must be frank. We are currently facing multiple crises that require our immediate attention. Perhaps we could begin by discussing how the Conclave might assist us in stabilizing the current situation. Zixcal's multifaceted eyes seemed to glitter with interest. Certainly, Commander. But first, there is something you should know. The Galactic Conclave has long been aware of both humans and Pandronians. The revelation hung in the air for a moment before Zixcal continued. Your sector of space was quarantined due to the presence of Gorgonax Prime. Your recent victory has now brought both species to our attention as potential members of the galactic community. Gray exchanged glances with Kavoth and Varen, his mind racing with the implications of this information. He was about to respond when his comm unit buzzed urgently. Excuse me, he said, stepping away from the table. Dr. Holt, report. Holt's voice came through, excitement evident despite the gravity of the situation. Commander, we've made a breakthrough. We've found a way to contain the expanding micro-universes by compressing them into stable, dense energy spheres. It's incredible. They could potentially serve as a new power source. But, sir, we're essentially manipulating nascent universes here. The ethical implications are staggering. Before Gray could fully process this information, another alert came through. It was Captain Volkov, his voice tense. Commander, we've detected a new threat. There's a swarm of microscopic machines assembling into larger structures. They appear to be remnants of Gorgonax Prime's technology. We're initiating countermeasures using EM pulses to disrupt their coordination, but we could use reinforcements. As Gray turned back to the conference table, his mind whirling with the rapid developments, he saw Ambassador Varen already engaging Zixcal in discussion. Arbitrator, Varen was saying, in light of recent events and the revelation of the Conclave's awareness of our existence, I propose that we discuss the possibility of a joint human-Pandronian application for Conclave membership. Gray nodded, picking up the thread. Our alliance's success against Gorgonax Prime demonstrates our readiness to join the galactic community. We bring unique perspectives and capabilities that could benefit the Conclave. As the diplomatic dance continued, Gray's comm unit buzzed once more. It was Lieutenant Chen. Commander, the Gorgonax offspring have completed their metamorphosis. They've evolved into highly intelligent telepathic beings capable of manipulating energy fields. Sir, they have crucial information about Gorgonax Prime's origins and weaknesses. Gray's mind raced, trying to process the flood of information and prioritize his responses. The diplomatic opportunity before him was unprecedented, but the immediate crises demanded his attention. As he opened his mouth to address Arbitrator Zixcal, he realized that every decision he made in the next few moments could have far-reaching consequences for the future of both humanity and the Pandronians in this vast, complex galactic stage. Community in this vast, complex galactic landscape. The tension in the conference room was palpable as Gray weighed his options. Before he could respond, Captain Volkov's urgent voice crackled through his comm unit once more. Commander, Situation critical. The microscopic machines have coalesced into a massive structure. It's taking on a form reminiscent of Gorgonax Prime. Gray's eyes widened. He turned to Arbitrator Zexcal, Ambassador Varen, and Admiral Kavoth. My apologies, but I must attend to this immediately. Ambassador Varen, Admiral Kavoth, please continue our discussions with the arbitrator. Without waiting for a response, Gray bolted from the room, his mind racing as he made his way to the bridge. The corridors were a flurry of activity, crew members rushing to their stations as alarms blared throughout the ship. As Gray burst onto the bridge, the main view screen flickered to life, revealing a chilling sight. A massive, worm-like entity writhed in space, its metallic body pulsing with an eerie, familiar energy. "Status report," Gray barked, his eyes fixed on the screen. Lieutenant Chen's fingers flew over her console. "Sir, the machine swarm has formed into a single entity. The crew is calling it Neo-Gorgonax. It's growing rapidly and approaching our position." Gray's teeth gritted. "Captain Volkov, form a defensive perimeter around our diplomatic and research vessels. Prioritize protecting the ships containing Dr. Holt's micro-universe spheres." "Aye, Commander," Volkov's voice crackled through the comm. Gray turned to Chen. "What's the status of the evolved Gorgonax offspring?" "Sir, they're calling themselves the Nexus beings now," Chen reported. "They've offered to help combat Neo-Gorgonax. They claim their new abilities can disrupt its cohesion at a fundamental level." Gray hesitated for a moment, weighing the risks. "Deploy them under strict supervision, Lieutenant. We need every advantage we can get." As Chen relayed the orders, Gray's comm unit buzzed. It was Dr. Holt, her voice tense but excited. "Commander, we've successfully contained several micro-universes in stable energy spheres, but using them as a power source is still highly volatile." "Understood, Doctor. Stand by for further instructions," Gray replied, his mind already formulating a plan. Before he could issue his next order, Chief Engineer Raxon's voice cut through the chaos. "Commander, we've made progress stabilizing the flagship's core, but we're not out of the woods yet. A full meltdown is still possible without additional intervention." Gray's eyes narrowed as he watched Neo-Gorgonax grow larger on the interface. The entity had developed long, tentacle-like appendages that reached out towards the nearest ships. "Energy-draining tendrils," Captain Volkov shouted over the comm. "They're latching onto our ships and depleting power reserves." Gray watched in horror as several ships in the defensive line went dark, drifting helplessly in space. He knew he had to act fast. "Dr. Holt," Gray commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Prepare one of the micro-universe spheres for weaponization. We're going to use its energy to destabilize Neo-Gorgonax's structure." As Holt acknowledged the order, Gray turned his attention to the Nexus being's assault on Neo-Gorgonax. The evolved creatures emitted powerful electromagnetic pulses that momentarily disrupted the entity's form, but the effect was fleeting. Neo-Gorgonax quickly adapted, its structure becoming more resilient with each attack. Suddenly, Dr. Ven and Nova burst onto the bridge, their eyes wild with excitement. "Commander," Ven exclaimed, "we've found a way to stabilize the flagship's core. We can redirect the excess energy into a makeshift weapon system, using the ship itself as a massive energy projector." Gray's mind raced, assessing the risks and potential rewards of this desperate plan. "Do it," he ordered, "but evacuate all non-essential personnel to other vessels. If this fails, I don't want unnecessary casualties." As the crew scrambled to implement the plan, Neo-Gorgonax loomed ever closer. Its massive form filled the view screen, tendrils lashing out at the remaining ships in Volkov's defensive line. Gray took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. "All ships, prepare for coordinated assault," he commanded. "Captain Volkov, initiate diversionary tactics with conventional weapons. Lieutenant Chen, have the Nexus beings intensify their electromagnetic assault. Dr. Holt, stand by to launch the weaponized micro-universe sphere on my mark." The bridge erupted into a flurry of activity as Gray's orders were relayed across the fleet. The air was thick with tension as everyone awaited the command to attack. Suddenly, Neo-Gorgonax changed tactics. It released a swarm of smaller, worm-like projections that darted towards individual ships with frightening speed. "Evasive maneuvers," Gray shouted, but it was too late for some. Several ships were quickly ensnared by the worm projections, their systems going haywire as Neo-Gorgonak's influence spread. Gray knew it was now or never. Raxon, initiate power transfer to the weapons system. The flagship shuddered violently as it channeled an enormous amount of energy. The hull began to glow white-hot, the metal groaning under the strain of containing such power. "Dr. Holt, launch the micro-universe sphere now," Gray ordered, his voice cutting through the cacophony of alarms and shouted status reports. As the sphere hurtled towards Neo-Gorgonax's central mass, Gray gave the final command. "Fire main weapon!" The flagship unleashed a blinding beam of energy, its trajectory intersecting with the path of the micro-universe sphere. Both extraordinary forces, one born of ancient Pandronian technology and the other from the remnants of Gorgonax Prime itself, converged on Neo-Gorgonax with devastating potential. A blinding flash of light engulfed the battlefield, forcing Gray to shield his eyes. The fate of the fleet hung in the balance as these unprecedented energies collided, with Neo-Gorgonax caught in the middle of this cosmic maelstrom. As the light began to fade, Gray strained to see the outcome of their high-stakes endeavor. The view screen slowly cleared, revealing the aftermath of their attack. What he saw next would determine the course of the battle, and perhaps the future of both humanity and the Pandronians in this new galactic age. As the light began to fade, Gray strained to see the outcome of their high-stakes endeavor. The view screen slowly cleared, revealing the aftermath of their attack. A massive shockwave rippled through space, causing Neo-Gorgonax's form to destabilize. Its worm-like projections retracted as it struggled to maintain cohesion. Gray's eyes narrowed, recognizing the critical moment. "All ships, press the advantage. Captain Volkov, target those weak points." Volkov's voice crackled through the comm. "Aye, Commander. All vessels, concentrate fire on the destabilized areas." The remaining ships in the fleet unleashed a barrage of conventional weapons, pummeling Neo-Gorgonax's weakened structure. Explosions bloomed across its metallic surface, each impact further compromising its integrity. "Lieutenant Chen, coordinate with the Nexus beings," Gray ordered. "Have them intensify their electromagnetic assault." Chen's fingers flew over her console as she relayed the commands. The Nexus beings, their new forms shimmering with energy, redoubled their efforts. Waves of electromagnetic disruption washed over Neo-Gorgonax, causing visible distortions in its already unstable form. For a moment, it seemed victory was within reach. Then Neo-Gorgonax made its desperate move. The entity's form began to dissolve, but instead of dissipating, it fragmented into countless microscopic machines. The swarm of nanites spread rapidly, like a metallic cloud engulfing everything in its path. "Sir, multiple ships reporting system failures?" Chen called out, her voice tight with urgency. "The nanites are infiltrating our vessels." Gray watched in horror as several ships in the fleet suddenly lost power, drifting helplessly in space. Others began to move erratically, their controls overridden by the invading machines. "Dr. Holt," Gray barked into his comm, "we need a solution now." Holt's voice came through, breathless but determined. "Commander, we can repurpose our micro-universe containment tech. We're creating localized energy fields to trap and neutralize the nanites. We're calling them nanite traps." "How soon can you deploy them?" "We're ready now, sir. We just need your authorization." Gray didn't hesitate. "Do it. Get those traps out there immediately." As Holt's team began deploying the nanite traps, Gray's comm unit buzzed again. It was Ambassador Varen. "Commander," Varen's voice was filled with barely held back excitement. "Arbitrator Zixcal has offered immediate assistance. The Conclave ships are moving to join our formation." Gray's eyes widened as he saw the sleek, advanced vessels of the Galactic Conclave glide into view on the tactical display. Their arrival shifted the balance of power on the battlefield. "Arbitrator Zixcal," Gray addressed the Conclave leader, "we welcome your assistance. Can your ships form a containment perimeter around Neo-Gorgonax? Use your shielding technology to prevent its further expansion." "Certainly, Commander Gray," Zixcal's multi-tone voice replied. "We stand ready to assist." As the Conclave ships moved into position, Gray refocused his attention on the immediate threats. All human and Pandronian vessels concentrate on deploying Dr. Holt's nanite traps and targeting Neo-Gorgonax's weakened structure. The battle intensified, with Gray coordinating the multi-species battle group with precision. The nanite traps began to show results, creating pockets of space clear of the microscopic invaders. Meanwhile, the combined firepower of the human and Pandronian ships continued to batter Neo-Gorgonax's diminishing form. Just as the tide seemed to be turning, Chief Engineer Raxon's panicked voice cut through the din of battle. "Commander, the core is destabilizing. The energy discharge has pushed it beyond safe limits. We're looking at an imminent meltdown." Gray's mind raced through possible solutions, each one more desperate than the last. "Can we contain it?" "Negative, sir," Raxon replied, his voice grim. "At this rate, we'll need to evacuate and scuttle the ship to prevent a catastrophic explosion. It could take out the entire fleet if we don't act fast." Gray's eyebrows furrowed as he weighed his options. The flagship was more than just a ship. It was the linchpin of their entire operation. Losing it now could mean losing everything they'd fought for. Suddenly, Dr. Ven's voice broke through on the comm. "Commander, we have an idea. It's risky, but it might save the ship." "I'm listening, Doctor." "We can use one of the remaining micro-universe spheres to absorb the excess energy from the core," Ven explained rapidly. "It's untested, but in theory it should work." Nova's voice chimed in. "The calculations check out, Commander, but I must warn you, if we're off by even a fraction, the results could be catastrophic." Gray took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The risk was enormous, but the alternative was certain destruction. "Do it," he ordered, "but be ready to abandon ship at a moment's notice if things go south." As Ven and Nova raced to implement their desperate plan, Neo-Gorgonax made its final, devastating push. The entity concentrated its remaining energy into a massive tendril, aiming directly for the flagship's vulnerable core. "Incoming!" Captain Volkov shouted over the comm. "All ships, intercept that tendril." Gray watched as Volkov's ships moved to block the attack, but their depleted defenses proved insufficient against Neo-Gorgonax's focused assault. The tendril pushed through their lines, bearing down on the flagship with terrifying speed. In that moment of crisis, the Nexus beings took action. Without hesitation, they positioned themselves between the flagship and the incoming tendril, forming a living shield. Their evolved forms glowed with intense energy as they deflected Neo-Gorgonax's attack. The strain on the Nexus beings was immediately apparent. Their forms began to distort, flickering and wavering as they held back the immense energy of the tendril. Seizing the opportunity, Gray issued his next command. "All ships, divert available power to Dr. Holt's nanite traps. Let's end this." The enhanced traps surged into action, rapidly neutralizing the nanite swarm and cutting off Neo-Gorgonax's ability to regenerate and adapt. The entity's form began to collapse under the combined assault of the human Pandronian conclave forces. Inside the flagship, Dr. Ven and Nova worked feverishly to integrate the micro-universe sphere into the core systems. "Initiating energy transfer now," Ven called out. The ship shuddered as the sphere began to absorb the excess energy. Warning klaxons blared throughout the vessel as the gravitational field fluctuated wildly. "Core temperature dropping," Raxon reported, his voice tight with tension. "It's working, but these gravitational fluctuations are tearing us apart." Outside, Neo-Gorgonax's death throes threatened to tear apart the very fabric of space in the battle zone. The entity's form twisted and contorted, releasing pulses of energy that distorted the surrounding area. Gray gripped the arms of his command chair, his mind racing. They had won the battle against Neo-Gorgonax, but the war was nowhere near the end. Now he faced an even greater challenge, containing the impending space-time rupture while protecting his fleet and maintaining the fragile new alliance with the Galactic Conclave. As alarms blared and reports flooded in from all corners of the battlefield, Gray steeled himself for the difficult decisions ahead. The fate of not just his ship, but potentially the entire sector, hung in the balance. With Neo-Gorgonax defeated but a new crisis looming, Gray knew that his next moves would be crucial in shaping the future of both humanity and the Pandronians in this vast and unpredictable galactic landscape. Gray's mind raced as he assessed the situation. The defeat of Neo-Gorgonax had brought them to the precipice of an even greater danger. The space-time rupture threatened to tear apart the very fabric of reality around them. "All ships, maintain distance," Gray barked into the comm. "Dr. Holt, we need those remaining micro-universe spheres deployed now. Create a containment field around the rupture." Dr. Holt's voice crackled through the speaker, tense but determined. "Already on it, Commander. We're modifying the spheres to generate a stable energy barrier. Launching in 10 seconds. Gray watched the tactical display as a series of glowing dots representing the micro-universe spheres shot out from their ships. They arranged themselves in a precise formation around the collapsing remains of Neo-Gorgonax. "Spheres in position," Lieutenant Chen reported. "Activating now." A brilliant flash of light filled the view screen as the spheres came to life. An iridescent bubble of energy expanded outward, engulfing the chaotic mass of the fallen entity and the surrounding spatial distortions. For a moment it seemed to work. The violent energies of the rupture were contained within the shimmering barrier. But then alarms began to blare across the bridge. "Commander, the containment field is unstable," Chen called out, her fingers flying over her console. "The micro-universe spheres are showing signs of structural failure." Gray leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "How long until total failure?" "At current rate of degradation, less than 5 minutes," Chen replied grimly. Gray's comm unit buzzed. It was Lieutenant Chen again, but this time her voice carried a note of hope. "Sir, the Nexus beings are volunteering for a mission. They believe they can stabilize the spheres from within the containment field." Gray hesitated for a split second. The Nexus beings had already risked everything to protect the fleet, but they were also their best chance at averting catastrophe. "Approved," Gray said firmly. "Tell them to proceed with caution." On the screen, Gray watched as the Nexus beings, their forms shimmering with energy, phased through the containment field. They spread out, each one moving to a different micro-universe sphere. "Amazing," Dr. Ven's voice came through the comm. "They're using their electromagnetic abilities to reinforce the sphere's integrity. It's working." As the Nexus beings worked to stabilize the containment field, activity on the bridge of the flagship intensified. Dr. Ven and Nova had made a breakthrough. "Commander," Nova reported, "we've found a way to channel the excess energy from our integrated micro-universe sphere into the ship's propulsion systems. It could give us unprecedented maneuverability and speed." "Do it," Gray ordered without hesitation. The flagship hummed with new energy, its hull emitting a soft glow as the enhanced propulsion systems came online. Gray felt a subtle shift beneath his feet as the ship's maneuverability increased exponentially. Before Gray could fully appreciate the ship's new capabilities, another voice cut through the comm chatter. It was Arbitrator Zixkel. "Commander Gray," the Conclave leader's multi-toned voice was urgent. "We've received word from the Galactic Conclave. Our battle has drawn attention. A delegation of powerful entities is en route to assess the situation. Some view your alliance as a potential threat." Gray's face hardened. They had just averted one crisis only to face another. "Understood, Arbitrator. Thank you for the warning." He turned to his communications officer. "Get me Ambassador Varen immediately." As Varen's face appeared on a nearby screen, Gray spoke quickly. "Ambassador, I need you to prepare a comprehensive report on our alliance's actions and intentions. We need to present a united and peaceful front to this delegation." "Of course, Commander," Varen nodded, already reaching for a datapad. "I'll have it ready as soon as possible." Gray switched channels. "Captain Volkov, reorganize the fleet into a defensive formation. We don't know if this delegation will be friendly." As the fleet began to shift positions, Dr. Holt's excited voice came through the comm. "Commander, we're detecting an anomaly at the center of the containment field. The remnants of Neo-Gorgonax. They're coalescing into some kind of crystalline structure." Gray leaned forward, intrigued. "What can you tell me about it?" "Initial scans show it contains vast amounts of data," Holt replied. "It could be information about Gorgonax Prime's origins, maybe even the history of its species." Gray's mind raced with the possibilities. This could be the key to understanding their enemy, perhaps even preventing future threats. But retrieving it would be incredibly dangerous. After a moment of deliberation, Gray made his decision. "Major Stryker," he called out. "Yes, sir?" Stryker's voice responded promptly. "I'm authorizing a high-risk extraction mission. I want you to lead a team into the containment field and retrieve that crystal." There was a brief pause before Stryker replied, "Understood, sir. We'll get it done." As Stryker and his team prepared for the mission, Gray moved the flagship into position near the containment field. The ship's new capabilities allowed it to maneuver with incredible precision, ready to provide support if needed. Gray watched as Stryker's team, clad in specially designed suits created by Dr. Holt, approached the shimmering barrier of the containment field. Just as they were about to enter, long-range sensors lit up. "Commander," Chen reported, her voice tense. "Multiple ships detected on approach. It's the galactic delegation." Gray took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on Stryker's team as they disappeared into the swirling energies of the containment field. The next few moments would be critical, not just for the success of their mission, but for the future of humanity and the Pandronians in the galactic community. As Stryker's team navigated through the chaotic energies towards the crystalline remnants of Neo-Gorgonax, Gray stood on the bridge, his mind racing with the challenges that lay ahead. The extraction team's success, the approaching delegation, the fragile alliance, all hung in a delicate balance. And as the unknown ships drew closer, Gray knew that every decision he made from this point on would shape the course of history. History and the future of humanity and the Pandronians in the galactic landscape. As the unknown ships drew closer, Gray's attention was suddenly drawn to the containment field. "Major Stryker, status report," Gray demanded, his voice tense. "Entering the containment field now, sir." Stryker's voice crackled through the comm, distorted by the energy fluctuations. "Activating stabilization systems." Gray watched the tactical display as Stryker's team, represented by small blips of light, pushed deeper into the swirling chaos of the containment field. The energy readings spiked erratically, causing interference across the bridge's systems. "Commander," Lieutenant Chen called out, her voice urgent. "The galactic delegation has accelerated. New estimated arrival time, 15 minutes. Gray's eyes sharp. "Ambassador Varen, we need that statement now." "Transmitting the final draft to your console, Commander," Varen replied, his usually calm voice tinged with stress. As Gray quickly scanned the document, alarms blared across the bridge. Chief Engineer Raxon's voice cut through the cacophony. "Commander, we're detecting a massive energy surge from the integrated micro-universe sphere. It's overloading the propulsion systems." "Reroute power through auxiliary systems," Gray ordered, his mind racing. "Dr. Venn, Nova, I need solutions. Now." Outside the flagship, the Nexus beings struggled to maintain the integrity of the containment field. Their luminous forms flickered and wavered, the strain of their task evident in their distorted shapes. "Sir," Captain Volkov's voice came through, "several Nexus beings are losing cohesion. We need to extract them immediately." Gray nodded, even though Volkov couldn't see him. "Prepare extraction shuttles. Equip them with tractor beams and energy-dampening fields. We'll need to pull out Stryker's team as well." As Volkov acknowledged the order, Arbitrator Zixkal approached Gray, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the chaos on the display. "Commander, I've received troubling news from the Conclave. There's a faction within the approaching delegation called the Isolationists. They oppose new species joining the galactic community." Gray's expression hardened. "Chen, run a discreet scan on those incoming ships. Dr. Holt, I want you to analyze that data for any signs of hostile intent or hidden weaponry." Inside the containment field, Major Stryker and his team pushed through the turbulent energy, their specialized suits barely holding up against the onslaught of gravitational fluctuations and radiation. "There!" Stryker shouted over the team's comm channel, pointing at a pulsating crystalline structure at the center of the chaos. "Move in, carefully." As they approached the crystal, a sudden burst of energy washed over them, momentarily disrupting their suits' systems. Warning lights flashed across their visors as they struggled to stabilize their equipment. "Status report," Stryker barked, his hands flying over his suit's controls. "Systems stabilizing," one of his team members responded. "But we need to move fast, sir. These suits won't hold up much longer. Stryker nodded, reaching for the specially designed containment unit strapped to his back. Let's get this done. Back on the flagship, Dr. Venn and Nova worked feverishly to balance the energy flow from the integrated micro-universe sphere. The ship hummed with hardly restrained power, its newly enhanced systems straining under the influx of energy. Rerouting power through tertiary conduits, Nova announced, her holographic form flickering as she processed vast amounts of data. It's working, but we're pushing the limits of the ship's architecture. Gray gripped the arms of his command chair, watching as the tactical display showed Volkov's extraction shuttles, moving into position around the containment field. The Nexus beings, their forms now barely holding together, began to retreat from the field's edge. Stryker, what's your status? Gray demanded. Crystal secured, sir, Stryker's voice came through, heavy with exertion. Making our way to the extraction point now. As Stryker's team navigated through the intensifying energy fluctuations, the bridge erupted into another flurry of activity. Commander, Chen called out, her voice sharp with alarm. One of the delegation ships has broken formation. It's accelerating towards us. Gray's eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display. The rogue ship's energy signature matched that of the isolationist faction Zix-Cal had warned about. All ships, battle stations, Gray commanded, his voice steady despite the tension coursing through him. Volkov, get those extraction shuttles back here now. We may have a fight on our hands. The flagship's enhanced propulsion systems surged to life, maneuvering the massive vessel into an intercept position between the approaching isolationist ship and the vulnerable extraction shuttles. As the distance closed between the two forces, Gray stood at the center of the bridge, his mind racing through potential scenarios and strategies. The containment field pulsed with erratic energy as Stryker's team and the last of the Nexus beings emerged from its chaotic interior. The extraction shuttles swooped in, their energy-dampening fields straining against the turbulent environment. Stryker's team secured, Volkov reported. Nexus beings are aboard, returning to the flagship now. Gray nodded, his eyes fixed on the approaching isolationist ship. Bring them in fast, Captain. We don't know what we're dealing with here. As the extraction shuttles raced back to the safety of the fleet, the crystalline structure from Neo-Gorgonax pulsed with an otherworldly energy, its secrets yet to be unraveled. The isolationist ship continued its rapid approach, its intentions unknown, but its trajectory unmistakably hostile. Commander Gray stood firm on the bridge of the flagship, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. The hard-won victory against Neo-Gorgonax had opened the door to new challenges, and as the isolationist ship bore down on them, Gray knew that the true test of their newfound alliance was only just beginning. The flagship's enhanced propulsion systems roared to life, its hull glowing with newfound power as Gray steered it into an intercept course with the approaching isolationist ship. All hands, brace for potential impact, Gray's voice echoed through the ship's communication channels. Volkov, status on the extraction? Final approach, Commander, Volkov responded, his voice strained. Stryker's team and the Nexus beings are almost... His words were cut short as a series of energy pulses erupted from the isolationist vessel, streaking towards the vulnerable extraction shuttles. Volkov's piloting skills were put to the ultimate test as he weaved through the barrage, using his own ship as a shield for the smaller craft. Gray watched the tactical display, his heart made as he saw several shots graze Volkov's hull. Damage report? Minor hull breaches on decks 3 and 4, Chen reported. Emergency force fields are holding. Stryker's team is aboard, Volkov's voice cut through the chaos. Nexus beings secured, returning to the flagship now. Gray nodded, his eyes fixed on the approaching isolationist ship. Activate advanced defense systems. Deploy energy-absorbing shields. The flagship's exterior shimmered as a network of interconnected energy fields sprang to life, creating a formidable barrier between the human Pandronian fleet and the hostile vessel. The isolationist ship's attacks dissipated against the shields, buying precious time for the extraction team to complete their mission. In the hangar bay, Major Stryker emerged from the shuttle, his suit scorched and dented. In his arms, he cradled a pulsating crystalline structure that seemed to defy the laws of physics. As he stepped onto the deck, nearby equipment began to malfunction, screens flickering and alarms blaring. Dr. Holt rushed forward, his eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and concern. "Quick, put it down here," he instructed, gesturing to a cleared area of the hangar. With practiced efficiency, his team erected a temporary containment field around the artifact, stabilizing its wild emissions. Meanwhile, the Nexus beings were escorted to a specially prepared medical bay, their once radiant forms now wavering like heat mirages. Dr. Venn and her team immediately set to work, using a combination of advanced medical technology and theoretical physics to stabilize their fluctuating energy signatures. On the bridge, Gray's moment of relief was short-lived. The isolationist ship, seemingly frustrated by the ineffectiveness of its initial assault, launched a new attack. A massive energy beam, crackling with destructive power, lanced out towards the flagship. The ship rocked violently as the beam struck its shields. Alarms blared across every deck as the defense systems strained under the onslaught. "Shields at 60% and dropping fast," Chen reported, her fingers flying over her console. "We can't take another hit like that." Chief Engineer Raxon's voice crackled over the comm. "Commander, I'm rerouting power from non-essential systems to reinforce the shields, but we can't keep this up indefinitely." Gray's mind raced, weighing his options. The diplomatic solutions seemed increasingly unlikely, yet escalating the conflict could have dire consequences. With a deep breath, he made his decision. "Dr. Nova," he called out, "prepare to engage the micro-universe technology. Channel all available power into our main weapon array." Nova's holographic form flickered into existence beside him, her expression grave. "Understood, Commander. Calibrating systems now." The flagship's hull thrummed with barely held back power as Nova worked, the micro-universe sphere pouring vast amounts of energy into the ship's systems. The weapon arrays began to glow, charging with a force that could potentially rival that of their attacker. Just as Gray prepared to give the order to fire, a new wave of ships appeared on the tactical display. The rest of the galactic delegation had arrived, their vessels forming a perimeter around the conflict zone. Their weapons were primed, but holding fire, a clear message to both sides. "Incoming transmission from the delegation's lead ship," Chen announced. Before Gray could respond, Arbitrator Zixcal approached, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the chaos on the bridge displays. "Commander, the delegation demands an immediate cessation of hostilities. We must de-escalate now, or risk losing any chance of a diplomatic resolution." Gray nodded, recognizing the opportunity. "Stand down weapons," he ordered. "Ambassador Varen, open channels to both the delegation and the isolationist ship. Propose an immediate ceasefire and offer to begin negotiations." As Varen worked to establish communications, the isolationist vessel powered down its weapons, perhaps recognizing its suddenly precarious position. A tense standoff ensued, with all ships maintaining their positions, neither side willing to make the first move. In the relative calm that followed, Dr. Holt's voice came through the comm. "Commander, we've begun preliminary analysis of the crystalline structure. You're not going to believe this. It contains vast amounts of data, including detailed star maps of unexplored regions and information about ancient, long-lost civilizations." Gray's eyes widened at the implications, but before he could respond, another crisis demanded his attention. "Commander!" Dr. Venn's voice was urgent. "The Nexus beings, they're exhibiting signs of further mutation. Their bodies are emitting energy pulses that are interfering with our systems. If we can't stabilize them soon, it could jeopardize everything." As if to punctuate her words, the lights on the bridge flickered ominously. Gray gripped the arms of his command chair, the weight of multiple crises pressing down on him. The isolationist threat, the potential of the crystal, the unstable Nexus beings, and the watchful eyes of the galactic delegation. Each demanded immediate attention. "Dr. Venn, intensify your efforts to stabilize the Nexus beings," Gray ordered. "Dr. Holt, I need you to accelerate your analysis of that crystal. If there's anything in there that could help us defuse this situation, we need to know now." As the crew worked feverishly to address these multiple crises, Lieutenant Chen's voice cut through the tension on the bridge. "Commander, long-range sensors are detecting a new anomaly at the edge of the system. It appears to be a wormhole. Gray turned to the main view screen, watching in disbelief as a massive, swirling vortex began to form. The space-time distortions caused by their earlier battle with Neo-Gorgonax were coalescing into something far more dangerous. Already he could see the outermost ships of the assembled fleets being affected by its gravitational pull. The commander stood, his mind racing as he assessed the rapidly evolving situation. The fate of the human Pandronian alliance and potentially the entire sector now hung in the balance. Gray knew his next decision would be crucial, and he had precious little time to make it. The fate of the human Pandronian alliance and potentially the entire sector now hung in the balance. Gray knew his next decision would be crucial, and he had precious little time to make it. As the massive wormhole continued to expand at the edge of the system, Gray's mind raced through potential solutions. The bridge fell silent, all eyes fixed on their commander, awaiting his next move. Gray's mind focused as he made his decision. "Open a channel to all ships in the vicinity," he ordered, his voice steady and clear, "including the isolationist vessel and the galactic delegation." Chen's fingers flew across her console. "Channel open, sir." Gray took a deep breath and began to speak, his words carrying across the vastness of space to every ship in the assembled fleet. "This is Commander Gray of the Human Pandronian Alliance. We face a threat that endangers us all. The wormhole before us is expanding rapidly, and its gravitational pull threatens to tear our ships apart. I propose a joint effort to address this growing danger. Our combined knowledge and technology may be our only hope for survival." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We've faced seemingly insurmountable odds before and prevailed. Together, we can do so again. I ask for your trust and cooperation in this crucial moment." The silence that followed was deafening. Gray held his breath, watching the tactical display for any sign of movement or response. Suddenly, a light blinked on Chen's console. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the isolationist ship," she reported, her voice tinged with surprise. The isolationist captain's face appeared on the main view screen, his alien features set in a grim expression. "Commander Gray, your alliance has shown remarkable resilience and ingenuity in the face of adversity. We agree to a temporary truce. Our advanced weapon systems are at your disposal." Before Gray could respond, Arbitrator Zixcal stepped forward. "The galactic delegation concurs. We will coordinate a unified response to this threat." Gray nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Thank you all. Let's get to work." Within minutes, Gray had assembled a team of the brightest minds from all factions. Dr. Holt and Dr. Venn represented the human contingent, while Nova's holographic form flickered beside a newly stabilized Nexus being. The isolationist captain sent his chief science officer, and Arbitrator Zixcal brought forth the most knowledgeable members of the galactic delegation. As the combined fleet moved into position around the wormhole, alarms blared across the flagship. The gravitational pull was intensifying, causing the ship's hull to groan under the strain. "Commander!" Dr. Holt's excited voice cut through the chaos. "We've made a breakthrough with the crystalline structure. It contains information about an ancient species that mastered space-time manipulation. I think we can use this knowledge to close the wormhole." Gray leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "Explain, Doctor." Holt's words tumbled out in a rush. "If we combine the flagship's micro-universe technology with the crystalline artifact, we can generate a controlled implosion at the center of the wormhole. It should collapse in on itself, sealing the rift in space-time." The Nexus being beside him pulsed with energy. "We can assist," it communicated telepathically. "Our electromagnetic manipulation abilities can stabilize the wormhole long enough for your plan to succeed." Gray nodded, his mind already formulating a strategy. "Dr. Venn, Nova, begin power-up sequences for the micro-universe technology. Dr. Holt, attune that crystal to the wormhole's energy signature. Volkov, I want you leading a defensive squad. Protect us from debris and energy surges." He turned to Major Stryker. "Prepare your team for shuttle deployment. You'll need to place additional implosion devices at key points around the wormhole's perimeter." As the crew sprang into action, Gray opened a channel to the assembled fleet. "All ships, move into position. Isolationist vessel and delegation ships, Form a protective perimeter with your advanced shields. Human Pandronian ships, take the lead. We're going to close this wormhole. The flagship surged forward, its newly integrated systems humming with power. The crystalline artifact pulsed with otherworldly energy as Dr. Holt worked feverishly to align it with the wormhole's signature. On the bridge, Nova's holographic form flickered rapidly as she channeled vast amounts of energy through the ship's systems. Micro-universe technology at full power, Dr. Venn reported. Ready to initiate on your command. Gray's eyes narrowed as he watched the swirling vortex of the wormhole grow ever larger on the display. All ships in position? Affirmative, Chen confirmed. Isolationist and delegation ships have formed a defensive perimeter. Stryker's shuttles are in place, ready to deploy implosion devices. The Nexus beings positioned themselves around the flagship, their bodies glowing with concentrated electromagnetic energy. The ship vibrated as it fought against the wormhole's intensifying pull. Gray took a deep breath, steadying himself. Initiate closure sequence. Now! The flagship's main weapon array fired, a concentrated beam of energy infused with the power of the micro-universe and the ancient knowledge from the crystal. It lanced out towards the heart of the wormhole, its trajectory stabilized and amplified by the energy from the Nexus beings. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The wormhole's swirling vortex began to fluctuate wildly, its edges pulsing with chaotic energy. Stryker's shuttles darted in and out of the maelstrom, planting additional implosion devices at key points. Gravitational pull increasing, Chen shouted over the sound of straining metal. We're being drawn in. Gray gripped his command chair. All engines, maximum thrust. Hold position. The flagship shuddered as its engines roared, fighting against the immense forces threatening to tear it apart. Around them, the rest of the fleet struggled to maintain their positions, their shields flickering under the strain. Wormhole destabilizing, Nova reported, her voice oddly calm amidst the chaos. Closure sequence at 75% completion. Gray watched as the wormhole's maw began to contract, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. Chunks of debris and bolts of energy erupted from its depths, battering against the fleet's shields. Volkov, status? Gray demanded. Holding the line, sir, came the strained reply. But we can't take much more of this. As if in response to Volkov's words, a massive surge of energy erupted from the wormhole, threatening to overwhelm the fleet's defenses. Gray opened his mouth to give the order to retreat, but before he could speak, the Nexus beings acted. In a blinding flash of light, they pooled their remaining energy into one massive electromagnetic pulse. This final push, combined with the continuous stream of energy from the flagship and the precisely placed implosion devices, triggered a chain reaction within the wormhole. The fabric of space-time warped and twisted, the wormhole collapsing in on itself with frightening speed. A blinding flash of light engulfed the entire fleet, overloading all sensors and systems. For a moment, there was nothing but silence and darkness. Then, slowly, the flagship's systems began to come back online. Gray blinked away the spots in his vision, focusing on the main view screen. Where the massive wormhole had been, there was now only empty space, studded with distant stars. Status report, Gray ordered, his voice hoarse. Chen's fingers danced across her console. All ships accounted for, Commander. Minor damage reported across the fleet, but no casualties. Gray allowed himself a small sigh of relief. Open a channel to the fleet. As he prepared to address the assembled ships, Gray couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at what they had accomplished. They had faced the impossible and emerged victorious, not through individual strength, but through unity and cooperation. The channel crackled to life, and Gray began to speak, his words carrying across the vast expanse of space to the diverse array of ships before him. To all ships of the combined fleet.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.